Chapter 309. She didn't care about anything anymore. She really didn't care about anything anymore. If her son liked his daughter-in-law, so be it. She would let him dote on her and pamper her however he wanted. As long as he returned safely and lived with Lele in the future, that would be enough. Gu Fengzi was like a thunderbolt in the clear sky, and she couldn't regain her senses for a long time. Her heart was filled with unwillingness and jealousy. She didn't expect that she was still alive, Sangwon, was she destined to be in the hands of this woman for the rest of her life? No, she couldn't accept it. Absolutely not. Gu Fengzi couldn't describe the anger in her heart. Everyone sighed at the miracle and said that Sangwon was lucky. At this point, there was nothing to hide anymore. Moreover, even if he wanted to hide it, there would be people who would ask about the cause and effect. Thus, Shi Fengming couldn't help but reveal what he knew. He said that Sangwon was saved by a passing ship and brought to the capital. Luckily, she was smart enough to send a letter from the capital. Thus, Big Brother went to the capital to look for her. Everyone was even more surprised when they heard that. They didn't expect such a coincidence to happen to her. She was indeed lucky. Wang was happy, but she couldn't help but feel a little unhappy. She asked Shi Fengming why he didn't say this earlier. Shi Fengming immediately regretted it. He regretted that he couldn't control his mouth and said something he shouldn't have. Great, now Big Aunt was angry, right? Second old mistress Shi was also unhappy. She pulled Shi Fengming aside and scolded him. You too, how can you be so careless when you're already an adult? Why didn't you say anything since you knew about it? Didn't you see how anxious we were? How could you hold it in and not say anything? You, what can I say? You, this child, you really deserve to be beaten. Shi Fengming couldn't help but look at Zhou Jingyi. Zhou Jingyi calmly lowered her head and drank her tea, pretending that she didn't see anything. She thought to herself, you deserve it. Who asked you to not be able to keep your mouth shut? If I don't scold you, who else should I scold? Shi Fengming could only scratch his head and snort. Big sister. It's not like I don't want to say it. It's Big Brother who doesn't want me to say it. Big Brother said that no one is allowed to tell. Otherwise, when he comes back, he will teach me a lesson. So, before he could finish his sentence, he was stopped by second old mistress Shi with a black face. Second old mistress Shi was furious. She thought to herself, why is this brat still so stubborn even when he's about to become a father? Of all the things that can't be said, he insists on saying them even more. Look at how ugly your big aunt's expression is. Wang was naturally sad. How could she not be sad that her own son did not believe that she had reached this point? No wonder he hadn't said a word since he left at dawn. Even when she sent people to find the Jean housekeeper, they couldn't find any news. Did he really hate her that much? Sister-in-law, don't blame Fengming. Wang sighed sadly and forced a smile. As long as Fengjiu and Wanyang are all right, that's better than anything else. Let's not talk about the past anymore. Sister-in-law is right. It's fine as long as you're fine. As long as they're all right, that's good. Fengjiu still misses you, or else he wouldn't be in such a hurry to come back. Second old mistress Shi quickly said with a smile, and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Third old mistress Shi also smiled. That's right, that's right. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since our household has so many people. It's really rare this time. When spring comes, who knows when my husband and I will have to leave. Sister-in-law, second sister-in-law, you must accompany me this year to have some fun and listen to some good plays. Of course, you'll definitely be there. Sister-in-law, don't you think so? Second old mistress Shi quickly agreed with a smile, and changed the topic. Wang nodded with a smile. That's right, our household is really lively this year. Everyone unconsciously began to discuss the New Year's matter. With the topic changed, the atmosphere became much more relaxed. After waiting anxiously for a few days, Shi Fengjiu and Sangwon finally returned to the Shi family in the afternoon. Wang Shi and the others were wrapped in fox fur coats, mink fur coats, and other large fur coats. They held hand stoves, and the young maidservants stood behind them with oil paper umbrellas to block the snow. They couldn't wait to welcome them at the door. The entrance was filled with people. The horse carriage slowly came to a stop. Wang's gaze tightened and she couldn't help but clench her fists. She stared at the silver-blue flower curtains swaying slightly in the wind, and her eyes gradually moistened. The curtains moved slightly and Shi Fengju bent over to come out. He was wearing a royal blue embroidered robe and a large cloak. His gaze swept across the crowd, and he was slightly startled before smiling. He got out of the carriage and reached out to help Sangwon out. Sangwon's entire body was wrapped in a fiery red fox fur coat and a snowy hat on her head. Only half of her small face and a pair of clear and bright eyes could be seen. Shi Fengju didn't mind the crowd and carefully carried Sangwon down from the horse carriage. Fengju. Wang had already stepped forward with the help of the crowd. She held his arm and said with a trembling voice, You. Mother. Shi Fengju patted Wang's hand lightly. I'm fine. Wan Yang is back too. Good. It's good that you're back. Wang couldn't help but feel sad when she heard him call her mother. But her heart relaxed a lot. Mother. Sangwon stepped forward and bowed. I've made you suffer. Wang gestured for Xiao Chun to support her, and nodded with a sigh. Sangwon shook her head and smiled as she greeted second old mistress Shi and the others. Quickly go in. It's cold outside. You must be tired from traveling in such weather. Third old mistress Shi quickly said with a smile. Shi Fengju smiled and said, It's nothing much. I'm just worried that we've alarmed mother and uncles. Wan Yang's body is still weak, so I'll bring her back to Ning Garden first. I'll pay my respects to mother and uncles later. With that, the crowd went in and dispersed. Only Gu Fengzi stood there with Wang. She wanted to say something but stopped herself. Mother, you should go back too. I'll pay my respects to you with Wan Yang later, Shi Fengju said. Good. All of you should go back and rest too. How's Wan Yang? Is she all right? I've already instructed Mama Li, Luya, Xingji, and the rest. The house should be tidied up already. I've boiled some ginseng soup. I'll get someone to send 2 bowls over later. Shi Fengju nodded his head and thanked her. Seeing that Wang and Gu Fengzi had left, he held on to Sangwon and walked back to Ning Garden. Gu Fengzi noticed that Shi Fengju did not even look at her once, let alone speak to her. Her heart felt bitter and bitter. After walking for a while, she couldn't help but turn back. However, her eyes widened and her body froze. Wang noticed that something was wrong with her, and turned back to look. She saw that Shi Fengju had unknowingly carried Sangwon in his arms, and walked towards Ning Garden step by step. Sangwon wrapped her arms around his neck, and snuggled up to his chest intimately. The two of them couldn't be separated. His feelings for her had actually reached such a stage? Wang's expression changed slightly when she saw that. She sighed softly and patted Gu Fengzi's hand gently. Let's go. Gu Fengzi held back her nasal voice and nodded while sobbing. Finally, she couldn't help but ask, Aunt Wang, big cousin he. Wang sighed. Wan Yang met with a disaster. It's nothing for Fengju to pity and dote on her. Feng. You've seen how Fengju treats Wan Yang with your own eyes you. Aunt Wang. Gu Fengzi saw that Wang seemed to have the intention to change her mind and quickly cut her off. She tried her best to adjust her emotions and smiled. I'm fine. I understand. Big sister has suffered a lot, and suffered a lot before she could return to big cousin's side. How can big cousin not be touched and not treat her well? Give up. She didn't know how to give up, nor did she know how to give up. Ever since she was young, she had always believed that everything belonged to her. Everything belonged to her. She couldn't give it up for no reason, and let another woman enjoy it. She couldn't do it. She would definitely die of pain. She definitely couldn't do it. Wang didn't say anything else after hearing her say that. She only let out a long sigh. Back in Ning Garden, although Mama Li Luya and Xingji had received news that they were fine, seeing the two of them alive in Ning Garden, everyone couldn't help but shed tears of joy. Mama Li held Sangwon's hand and was speechless for a long time. Luya, on the other hand, had already rushed over to hug her and sobbed uncontrollably. Sangwon felt a burst of warmth in her heart and comforted them with a smile. Eldest young master and young mistress must have suffered a lot on the way back. They're finally back. Mama Li felt sad. Seeing Sangwon's small face becoming thinner, she felt even more distressed. She thought to herself that she had to nourish her well when they returned. Shi Fengju smiled and said, That's right, they're finally back. Nanny, the weather is cold now. Wan Yang's body is still a little weak. You have to take care of her and nourish her well. That's right. That's right. Mama Li nodded with a smile. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but laugh when they saw eldest young master looking at young mistress affectionately. Sangwon blushed and said to Shifengju angrily, "My body is fine and there's nothing wrong with it. Why are you talking nonsense again?" Shifengju had a good temper. He simply held her hand tightly and said with a smile, "I'm just worried about you. Seeing that you're so thin, my heart aches." Eldest young master really dotes on young mistress. Mama Li couldn't help but laugh. The maidservants also joined in the fun, but their faces were slightly hot. They thought that eldest young master was more affectionate with young mistress than before. Shifengju saw that Sangwon's face was flushed red. He glanced at her and knew that she was thin-skinned and would get angry if he continued to speak. He smiled and stopped, ordering the servants to help her change her clothes and wipe her face. After tidying up and changing into casual clothes, the two of them sat down in the warm room. When the maidservants served tea, Shifengju waved his hand and dismissed them. He pulled Sangwon over and hugged her to sit on his lap. He lowered his head and deeply sniffed her hair. He sighed with satisfaction and said, "Wan Yang, we're finally back." Sangwon smiled and said softly, "Home is still the best. Nothing has changed." Chapter 310. Kiki, as long as you like it. I've specifically instructed that nothing is allowed to change, and no one is allowed to step into Ning Garden. Shifengju smiled and held her face, lowering his head to her forehead. "This is our place." Sangwon's heart warmed and she unconsciously held his hand. She said softly, "Fengju, what if I really can't come back? How long will you remember me?" "How long?" Shifengju raised his eyebrows, obviously dissatisfied with her question. He said, "Until I die. Wan Yang, I don't dare to think about what I'll do without you, and you're not allowed to think about it either." Sangwon's heart moved, and she softly replied with an N. She leaned into his embrace without saying a word, but her heart ached for no reason. In the end, she couldn't help but ask, "Then if I'm no longer around, how long will it take for you to marry someone else?" Shifengju lowered his head and met with a pair of black sparkling eyes staring at him without blinking. Her eyes were calm, but the meaning behind them was very obvious. She said, "Don't tell me you won't marry again, I won't believe it." Shifengju laughed and gently caressed her face. He sighed, "Wan Yang, if you asked me this question in the past, I wouldn't know how to answer. But now I know. If you're no longer around, I won't marry again. I'll only have you as my wife. Maybe after a few years, I'll take in a concubine and give birth to a son. Maybe I won't have the intention to, and I'll adopt one from second brother or third brother. Wan Yang, do you think I'll have any thoughts about other women without you? In this world, no one can compare to you, and no one can replace you." Fengju. Sangwon's nose felt a little sour, and her heart felt sour. She believed that what he said now was from the bottom of his heart. This moment was enough for her. "I won't leave you never again." "I know." Shifengju lowered his head and kissed her gently. The woman in his arms was destined for him to use his own life to love her, dote on her, and never be able to leave her. Shifengju and Sangwon seemed to have forgotten about Gu Fengzi and the matter of Gu Fengzi. After returning to the Fu for several days, Shifengju did not mention a single word about how to deal with Gu Fengzi in front of Wang. Sangwon didn't care either. She used the excuse that she was weak and needed to rest. Other than paying her respects, she didn't leave Ning Garden. Other than occasionally going to Zhou Jingyi's place to sit and chat, she didn't see anyone else. Gu Fengzi once wanted to visit, but was stopped by Mama Li with a few words. Gu Fengzi was secretly anxious. Originally, Wang's attitude was very obvious. She said that she would definitely stand up for her. Later, when Sangwon met with an accident, almost everyone thought that she had lost her life. As a result, the position of the Shi family's young mistress was vacated, and Gu Fengzi was obviously the number one candidate. Not only did she think so, Wang also revealed this intention. Although she felt terrible about her daughter-in-law's misfortune, what had happened could not be undone. Her son could not stay single for the rest of his life for the sake of his daughter-in-law. At this time, the family still had to be passed on, and her son still needed someone to send him off in the future. Unexpectedly, Shi Fengju's reaction to Sangwon's accident was so big, and now that he brought her back safely, Wang's relationship with him had unknowingly drifted apart. Wang's heart hesitated again. Gu Fengzi had hinted at her several times, intentionally or unintentionally, but she didn't respond. If it was in the past, this would be impossible. Wang didn't stand up for her, and she couldn't enter Ning Garden. She wanted to say a few words to Shi Fengju, but Shi Fengju didn't even have the chance to listen to her. Gu Fengzi was so anxious that she secretly hated him. A few days later, Sangwon suddenly felt uncomfortable during lunch and retched. She called a doctor to take her pulse and found that she was more than a month pregnant. This was undoubtedly good news for Sangwon, who had been expecting a child for a long time. Shi Fengju was also overjoyed when he came back in the evening and held her shoulder with a smile. Wang and the others were also very happy and said that this was double happiness. Unexpectedly, just 2 to 3 days after the good news was spread, a rumor started to spread in the household. There were many discussions about Sangwon's pregnancy and so on. The people who heard it couldn't help but think that young mistress wasn't pregnant after being married to young master for such a long time. After going missing and coming back, she was pregnant. This matter was indeed strange. When the rumor reached Wang's ears, Wang couldn't remain calm. Although it was a rumor, there was a reasonable basis for it. She couldn't help but believe it. Mama Li and the others also heard the news, but how could they dare to let Sangwon know? They kept it a secret from her. Shi Fengju was full of excitement these past few days, and left early and returned late, so he didn't know about it for a while. It was Wang who couldn't remain calm, and called him over to ask. Only then did Shi Fengju find out. For a moment he was shocked and angry, and his face immediately darkened. Which bastard is spreading such nonsense? There are really no rules in this household. Wang was unhappy, but what you said makes sense. You and Wan Yang have always been on good terms, but she hasn't been pregnant for so long. How could she be pregnant after going missing for a while? Fengju, mother knows that you don't feel good, but you have to calm down and think about it carefully. Mother. Without waiting for Wang to finish, Shi Fengju angrily interrupted. Of course the child in Wan Yang's stomach is my son. I know it very well. I'm also very calm, so there's no need to think about it carefully. Mother, do you think that Wan Yang is a shameless woman? I didn't say that about her. Wang frowned and said. But who knows what happened when she went missing? If she was unconscious before, I'm afraid even she wouldn't be able to explain it clearly. Don't talk about it anymore. Shi Fengju said angrily. I must get to the bottom of this matter, and find out who started this rumor. Wan Yang's child is definitely my child. Do you think I don't know? Since she was rescued, the two of them had been loving each other every day like glue. Counting the days, how could she not be pregnant with his child? The more Shi Fengju thought about it, the more he hated it. I must find out who is so insidious behind this matter. I must tear that person into pieces. Wan Yang's body is a little weak, so mother, you'd better not force her. If anything happens to her or the child, I'm afraid I won't be filial. You. Wang was stunned and stared at Shi Fengju in shock. After he bowed, he had already left angrily. Nanny Jiang, did you hear that? Did you hear that? It took a while for Wang Shi to recover from the shock. Her son's words had shocked her like an earthquake. He actually dared to threaten her. He actually said, I'm afraid I won't be filial. He wants to disobey me, his mother? I'm his mother. Didn't I say that for his own good? If the child isn't his, it'll be a big joke and he'll lose all his face. Wang felt her heart turn into ashes and tears flowed down her cheeks. Nanny Jiang sighed and quickly persuaded. Old mistress, don't be like this. Young master finally found young mistress, so it's normal for him to be worried about her. Old slave doesn't think he's disobeying you, right? Old mistress, perhaps you're thinking too much. Whether young mistress's child is young master's or not, how could he not know? Young mistress is only a month pregnant, and old slave thinks that young mistress only got pregnant after young mistress found her. With young mistress's character and her deep love for young master, she would never do anything to betray young master. You have to believe her. Wang sighed. Gossip is a fearful thing. Don't tell me Fengju doesn't understand such a simple principle. How can this matter be explained clearly? Nanny Jiang thought for a while and said, the more it's like this, the more important it is for young mistress to give birth to the child. As long as the child is born, won't everything be clear after a blood test? If the child can't be kept, then it'll be hard to explain. Wang was startled. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. Nanny Jiang's words sounded reasonable at first, but she felt that something was wrong. What was wrong, she couldn't tell. Forget it. Wang sighed. I don't care anymore. Since he has his own ideas, then let him be. Thinking of her son's words, she couldn't help but feel dispirited. Sure, Fengju didn't know that Sangwon still didn't know about this matter. He hurried back to Ning Garden and comforted Sangwon gently. However, he didn't want to arouse Sangwon's suspicions. By the time Sure Fengju felt that something was wrong, Sangwon had already figured it out. Under her questioning, Sure Fengju could only tell her the truth. Looking at her pale face, Sure Fengju felt extremely vexed. Wan Yang. Sure Fengju held her hand, but it was cold. He quickly chuckled and said softly, don't think too much, I believe you. The child in your belly is definitely mine. Sangwon felt better after hearing that, but it took her a while to recover from the shock and humiliation. She muttered, how can this be? How can this be? Following that, she smiled bitterly and sighed. It's no wonder that people would think that way. This child really came at the wrong time. Her hand gently caressed her flat stomach. Her heart ached, and she almost shed tears. She had been looking forward to it for so long and finally had a child. Who would have thought that after just a few days of joy, she would have to face such an unexplainable matter? Fortunately, Sure Fengju doted on her and was considerate of her. Her experience in Wuwei Manor was completely concealed, and not a single word was leaked to anyone. Otherwise, this rumor would have been even more true. At that time, even Mammy Li, who loved and protected her the most, would have doubts, wouldn't she? Don't talk nonsense. Sure Fengju forcefully pulled her into his embrace and raised his hand to cover her mouth. He said softly, Wan Yang, this child came at the right time. I like it very much, so you must like it too. Wan Yang, as long as I acknowledge this child, no one can say anything. He is the grandson of our Sure family's eldest branch. Fengju. Sangwon leaned into his embrace. Her eyes became warm, and she could no longer hold back her tears. She choked with sobs and said, Fengju, thank you. You treat me like this. You are my wife, why are you thanking me? Isn't it natural for me to treat you and our child this way? Sure Fengju gently lifted her face and wiped away the tears on her face. He smiled gently and said, don't cry, it's not good for the child. You are pregnant now, so you have to be cheerful and happy. Only then will our child be healthy. Chapter 311. Sangwon finally stopped crying and smiled. She leaned into his embrace and sighed. Fengju, I'm lucky to have you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to explain myself even if I had a mouth all over my body. Sure Fengju lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Suddenly he sneered. There's no smoke without fire. I think there's something strange about this matter. I'll ask Nanny to investigate. If I find out who's behind this, I won't let her off easily. Sangwon's heart skipped a beat and Gu Fengzi's name subconsciously appeared in her mind. She moved her lips but did not say anything. Gu Fengzi was originally not on good terms with her, and she had enough space to make an issue out of this matter. If she really spread such a rumor, although her intentions were vicious, she would still be handing it over to others. If she could think of it, how could Sure Fengju not think of it? He would make the decision, so why should she say anything more? Don't take this matter to heart, en? Sure Fengju lowered his head and rubbed against her. Wan Yang, you have to promise me. Otherwise, how can I be at ease with you and your son? Sangwon chuckled. How do you know they're mother and son and not mother and daughter? Seeing that she knew how to joke with him, Sure Fengju guessed that she had gotten over it. His heart relaxed and he smiled. No matter if they're mother and son or daughter, they're both my precious treasures. You're so talkative. Sangwon couldn't help but blush when she heard him say that. She lightly spat at him. Shi Fengju then called Mama Li, Luya, Xingji, and the others to come in and gave them instructions. Seeing that their young master was protecting their young mistress, everyone's worried hearts finally relaxed and they quickly agreed with a smile. Shi Fengju then instructed Mama Li to thoroughly investigate the source of the rumor. Mama Li immediately nodded and said, "Young master, don't worry. Old slave has been paying attention these days. In this household, there aren't many people who don't get along with young mistress and wish for her to be unlucky. I believe that the old slave will be able to find the root of the problem and report it to the eldest young master. Then I'll wait for the good news from wet nurse." Shi Fengju nodded and glanced at Sangwon. After accompanying Sangwon for a while, Shi Fengju went to the study room to attend to some matters. Mama Li went forward to Sangwon and said with a smile, "Young mistress, you can rest assured now. Old slave knew that young master would definitely protect you." "Nanny," Sangwon felt grateful and looked up at her with a smile. "Do you also believe in Wan Yang?" "Of course," Mama Li said without hesitation. "Young mistress, I naturally trust your character. Besides, if young master trusts you, why wouldn't I trust you? Regarding this matter, no matter what others say, it's all false. You and young master are the clearest about this matter. Just wait and see. When old slave finds out the villain behind this, I'll teach her a lesson. I'll have to trouble you with this matter, Nanny." "Young mistress, don't say that. This is old slave's duty," Mama Li replied with a smile. "Nanny," Sangwon frowned slightly and said, "You must have known about this matter long ago, right? Also, Luya and Xingji. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" This was clearly something related to him, but he was the last one to know about it. Thinking of this, Sangwon felt a little unhappy, but also a little lucky and scared. Fortunately, it was Shi Fengju who mentioned this matter to her first. If her mother-in-law had asked her unexpectedly in front of her, how would she have responded? If something went wrong, her anger and shame would have been seen by others as her being unable to show her face and panicking after the matter was exposed. At that time, she wouldn't have been able to defend herself. Mama Li felt a little apologetic and sighed softly. This servant was also hesitating whether to tell young mistress, but this servant was afraid that it would affect your pregnancy and didn't dare to act rashly. This servant was thinking of finding an appropriate time to tell you, but young master said it first. Mammy Li said with a sigh of relief. It was naturally much better for first young master to say it in person than anyone else. Sangwon sighed. "Nanny, fortunately young master told me about it. If I didn't know anything and Nanny asked, how would I answer her? Old slave knows." Mama Li hurriedly bowed and said, "If there is anything in the future, old slave won't dare to hide it." Sangwon nodded. "I know you are doing this for my own good, but there are some things that can't be hidden, so it's better to say it early, don't you think so?" "Young mistress is right." Mama Li smiled and nodded, her heart slightly relieved. After 3 days, Shi Fengju returned to the Fu in the afternoon, and hurriedly rushed to Ning Garden with an angry expression. A group of servants met him on the way and couldn't avoid him in time, so they were all surprised. It wasn't until he saw Sangwon that Shi Fengju's expression became slightly better. Seeing that Mama Li wasn't there, he immediately ordered someone to find her. "What happened? Why is your expression so ugly?" Sangwon asked with concern. "Wan Yang," Shi Fengju's expression darkened, and he coldly said, "We have too many misgivings and that's why they took advantage of us. That slut Gu Fangzi, she really isn't a good person. I just didn't expect her heart to be so vicious. When Nanny comes, I'll tell you more about this. Wan Yang, don't get emotional when you hear this." Sangwon stared blankly for a moment before nodding her head. As soon as Mama Li came in, she felt that the atmosphere wasn't right. Before she could say anything, Shi Fengju asked, "Nanny, how is the matter I asked you to investigate?" Mama Li was stunned and quickly replied, "It's almost done. It's not difficult to investigate this matter. We'll be able to find out later." "We'll find out today," Shi Fengju said. "You don't have to have any misgivings. It doesn't matter what method you use, as long as you can find out." Although Mama Li didn't know why Shi Fengju would suddenly do this, she thought for a moment and nodded her head in agreement. This rumor had started in the inner residence, and the inner residence was only so big. With the number one suspect already in their minds, it wouldn't be difficult to investigate. They only needed to find out who the master and servant of Peony Court had been in contact with during the first 2 days of the rumor, where they had appeared, how long they had stayed, and why they had been in contact. Soon they would be able to find clues. If they continued to investigate, they wouldn't be able to avoid it. Shi Fengju sneered. Nanny, do you know? Wan Yang's encounter this time was also because someone had tampered with it. It wasn't an accident. That slut really has guts. She dared to plot against my wife. What? Sang-won and Mama Lee were both shocked, and their faces turned pale. It wasn't that Sang-won didn't have her suspicions, but there wasn't the slightest clue to be found. Moreover, Gu Fengzi was still a woman of the inner residence. She might not have been able to stretch her hands so far. Moreover, she was jealous of her and wanted to replace her. However, when it came to plotting against someone's life, Sang-won still didn't quite believe that she had the guts to do so. Also, that teacher of Plum Blossom Nunnery was a virtuous and respected old teacher. How could she collude with a vile person like Gu Fengzi? Shi Fengju coldly said. That old nun of Plum Blossom Nunnery did all kinds of evil. She was finally exposed, and she even confessed to this matter. Also, the person I sent to White River Town's ferry to investigate also reported back. Wan Yang, on the day you crossed the river, the original ferry at the ferry had already been transferred away by someone with a large sum of money. The ferry you boarded only appeared at the last minute to wait for you. That fake boatman has also been caught. Because we didn't manage to catch the person who passed the message for that slut, I didn't say anything about this matter. Today, young Master Zhuang happened to catch that person for me. After questioning him, he confessed everything. Nanny, hurry up on your side. I want to settle this matter before the new year. Yes, yes. Mama Lee nodded her head in agreement. She felt a chill run down her spine. Although she didn't like Miss Gu, she couldn't believe that a young girl like her could be so vicious. It was truly unthinkable. Young master, there's no time to lose. This old slave will go now. Mama Lee gathered her thoughts and bowed. Go, the sooner the better. Shi Fengju waved his hand. Shi Fengju. Seeing that Mama Lee had left, Sang-won looked at Shi Fengju worriedly. Wan Yang, what's wrong? Shi Fengju found it funny and held her hand gently. Sang-won held his hand back and said softly, Fengju, I will never lie to you or betray you. I will always be by your side. Don't be sad. Shi Fengju didn't expect her to say such words. He was startled for a moment and his heart warmed. His eyes dimmed and he sighed dejectedly. Wan Yang, I really didn't expect her to become like this. I never thought that there would be a day when she would become like this. After seeing her true colors, even though Shi Fengju was disdainful of her, and his feelings for her in the past were all gone, he was still able to understand her. After all, she was an orphan girl who had nothing. It was normal for her to scheme to obtain wealth and status for herself. She kept pestering him, and he could see that she was unwilling. But since he didn't accept it, she had no choice but to give up. What he didn't expect was that her heart would become so vicious that she would scheme so viciously. He would never allow such a woman to stay in the household. Thinking about the difference between the past and the current her, Shi Fengju felt even more disappointed in his anger. After all, they grew up together. After all, she was his cousin and his mother's beloved niece. When he thought about the past and looked at the present, the huge gap in his heart couldn't be described with words. Wan Yang, is it my fault? If I had hardened my heart and sent her away, she wouldn't have become like this and you wouldn't have had to suffer so much. Shi Fengju smiled bitterly. Fengju. Sang-won held his arm and leaned on his shoulder gently. She is your relative after all. Moreover, she is separated by her mother. Moreover, ever since the mourning period ended, she would fall ill every 2 to 3 days. There were also many things happening at home. It's normal for her to be delayed until now, so how can you be blamed? You're not a heartless person, so how can you do such a heartless thing? This is the path she chose, and it has nothing to do with you. I don't feel any pain or grievance. Haven't I returned to your side? Shi Fengjiu held her tightly in his arms and buried his head in her warm neck. He whispered, Wan Yang, don't lie to me and don't betray me. I won't. Sangwon said gently, Fengjiu, I won't. I believe you won't. You are my Wan Yang. Shi Fengjiu smiled and hugged her even tighter. Chapter 312. Sangwon suddenly asked curiously, Young Master Zhuang, why is he involved in this matter? Why would he investigate this matter? Shi Fengjiu's eyes lit up and he couldn't help but chuckle. He smiled at Sangwon and said, I've been so happy these days that I forgot to tell you about this matter. I'm afraid that you won't be able to keep your servant girl. What do you want to do? Sangwon opened her eyes wide in alarm. Could it be that he wanted to take advantage of Luya? In the past, she wouldn't allow it, much less now. What are you thinking about? Shi Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh when he saw her like this. He said, I only need you. In the past, I didn't have any ideas about that girl, and now I won't. Why don't you finish your words in one breath? You only know how to scare people. Sangwon smiled and felt relieved, but her curiosity was piqued. But what does that last Luya have to do with young Master Zhuang meddling in this matter? Shi Fengjiu smiled and said, Isn't it because of that girl Luya that young Master Zhuang interfered in this matter? I told you before that he saved Luya. Do you remember? Of course I remember. Sangwon nodded and sighed. He helped a lot in this matter. Now that I've returned safely, please thank him on my behalf. You don't need to thank him, Shi Fengjiu said with a smile. He should thank you instead. I don't know what's going on between him and Luya. In short, I can see that he really likes that girl. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the initiative to help me investigate this matter. Ever since Zhuang Weixian saved Luya that day, he sent the shopkeeper away to handle some matters while he brought a few trusted aides to stay in White River Town to help out. Even the suspicious point about the ferryman was discovered by Zhuang Weixian first before he went to investigate. Who knew what had happened between him and Luya during this period of time? In short, things were different from before. Sangwon, on the other hand, seemed to be in a difficult position. Her beautiful eyebrows knitted slightly. After a moment she said, I'm very grateful to him for this matter. I also owe him a favor. However, Luya and I are as close as sisters. I can't possibly give Luya to him just because I want to repay young Master Zhuang, right? Luya is now Nanny's goddaughter. Fengjiu, don't agree to anything. Young Master Zhuang would naturally marry a lady from a prestigious family in the future. In addition, old Mistress Zhuang had always been at odds with her mother-in-law. She might not be pleased with Luya, who came from the Shi family. Moreover, Luya had seriously told her that she would never be a concubine. How could she sacrifice her just to return a favor? I know. Shi Fengjiu smiled. What if Luya is willing? You don't have anything to say, do you? Impossible. Sangwon suddenly became alert and said, Luya won't agree to it. Unless you use some means to force her to agree. Sangwon believed that such means were nothing to Shi Fengjiu. Wan Yang. Shi Fengjiu heard her speak without the slightest trace of politeness. He didn't know whether to be proud that she thought so highly of him, or to be angry that she thought so highly of him. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of person do you think I am? Shi Fengjiu smiled and said, Don't tell me you didn't notice that Luya has been running out of the residence from time to time these days. Their luck wasn't too good. He even saw it once. Sangwon was suddenly stunned. It seemed that what he said was true. Wan Yang, Shi Fengjiu smiled and said, This matter really has nothing to do with me. It's their own matter. You should find an opportunity to call that girl over and ask her. Won't you know everything? You're her master. She wouldn't dare to hide anything from you. Sangwon sighed and said, I have to find an opportunity to ask her. That girl, why didn't she say anything? Although Sangwon was worried that Luya would have a hard time in the future if she really followed Zhuang Weixian. Everyone had their own ambitions. If she insisted, all she could do was to help her. In the future, she would protect her as much as she could. That was all she could do. This matter isn't urgent. Ask her after the new year. That girl isn't stupid. Don't worry too much. Shi Fengjiu comforted her again. Sangwon was at ease about this. Luya wasn't a person who fawned over those in power. Moreover, she had Mama Li as her godmother, who emphasized rules the most. She wouldn't do anything stupid. Now that the new year was over and the new year was coming, this matter wasn't urgent at the moment. Shi Fengjiu didn't go out in the afternoon. He stayed in the room with Sangwan and waited for Mama Li's news. In the evening, Mama Li finally came to report. Seeing her come in, Shi Fengjiu's face turned cold. How is it? Mama Li nodded and sighed. Everything is as you expected. We have a witness. Shi Fengjiu nodded and stood up. Take some people and go to my mother's place. We'll have dinner after this matter is settled. Don't make people uncomfortable. Yes. Mama Li saw that his face was full of anger and didn't dare to oppose. Wanyang, don't go. Wait for me here. Shi Fengjiu said to Sangwan. Sangwan nodded. Take your time. Don't make it too difficult for mother. Don't worry. Shi Fengjiu nodded. In fact, there was no need to say anything more about this matter. Mama Li pried open the mouth of the servant in the kitchen who was bribed by Gu Fangzi. She was very cunning. She didn't even handle a servant in Peony Park, but she did it herself. The old maid in the kitchen was also a talkative person. It was natural for her to spread the rumor. If it weren't for Mammy Li, who was shrewd, it would be impossible for her to find out the truth so quickly. The confession of the teacher in Plum Blossom Nunnery, and the person who was caught by Shi Fengjiu was certain. Shi Fengjiu only needed to tell Wang the process. He didn't need to worry that she wouldn't believe him. After hearing that, Wang Shi did not believe it at all. She was dumbfounded. She didn't dare to believe it and didn't want to believe it. Feng is such a good person. How could it be? How could she do such a thing? She has always respected Wanyang. After Wanyang got into trouble, she must have been very sad. Mother, do you think I would make such a joke? Shi Fengjiu said faintly. The old nun in Plum Blossom Nunnery is still in prison. If mother wants to ask her face to face, it won't be difficult. As for the boatman at the ferry and the hooligan on the street, do you really want to ask them personally? Wang shook her head and smiled bitterly. I naturally shouldn't doubt your words. No matter what, you and Feng grew up together. Even if you don't like her, I believe you wouldn't accuse her like that. It's good that you know. Shi Fengjiu let out a long sigh. I can't keep her in the household. I don't know what she will do next. Wang's heart trembled. She looked at her son for a moment and nodded gently. But she couldn't bear to say, Feng shouldn't have done such a thing, but she did it because she likes you. Fengjiu, give her some face and don't make this matter public, okay? Also, it's going to be the new year in a few days. After the new year. Mother, Shi Fengjiu said coldly. It's fine if this matter isn't made public, but I can't wait until after the new year. She must leave early tomorrow morning. If I see her again, I don't know what I will do. Just a little bit more, and he would have lost his wife completely. He would have been in so much pain that he wished he was dead. He would have felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife, and he would have caused his wife to suffer. Keeping her here was definitely not an option. Wang opened her mouth and sighed. Fine. It's the same whether she leaves early or late. There are benefits to leaving early. Nanny Jiang, go invite Miss Gu over. I have a few words to say to her. AI, why is this child so muddle-headed? Muddle-headed? This wasn't muddle-headed, this was vicious. Shi Fengjiu turned his face away and didn't say a word. Gu Fangzi didn't know what was going on and walked in briskly as usual. Before she even lifted the curtains, she called out Aunt Wang, with a smile and walked into the warm room. When she saw that Shi Fengjiu was also present, Gu Fangzi was secretly delighted. She thought that her aunt and cousin were discussing her matters, and her eyes unconsciously lit up. When Wang heard her cheerful Aunt Wang, she felt a stab of pain in her heart. She couldn't bear it and stared at her for a while before nodding and sighing. You're here. Sit down. And Aunt Wang. Gu Fangzi maintained her elegant posture and smiled reservedly. She glanced at Shi Fengjiu and bowed to him. Big cousin. Shi Fengjiu didn't have any expression on his face, and turned a deaf ear to her greeting. He didn't hear her at all and didn't even look at her. Gu Fangzi smiled and sat down reservedly. It wasn't the first day that he treated her like this. She knew that he had a deep misunderstanding, so of course, she wouldn't argue with him. She believed that after a long time, she believed that with her patience and hard work, he would change one day. Then they would return to their previous intimacy. Wang looked at the elegant, delicate, slender, and sweet young girl in front of her and her heart was in a daze. If her son hadn't said what he said, she wouldn't have believed that her heart was so vicious. She had schemed against someone's life and still smiled so sweetly in front of her as if nothing had happened. Wang couldn't help but shiver. She suddenly felt that she was really old. The more she couldn't understand her son, the more she couldn't understand this niece who had grown up by her side. Fong, or your cousin-in-law is pregnant and has just come back with such grievances. Her body is still weak, so we can't agitate her anymore. The matter between you and your big cousin. Mother. Shi Fengju interrupted her. Don't say that. Don't push everything to Wan Yang. Otherwise, Wan Yang will be blamed by others and do something evil behind her back. If you feel embarrassed, I'll say it. Gu Fengzi, go back and pack up. Tomorrow morning, I'll have someone send you out of the household to a village outside the city to stay temporarily. When you've thought it through and are willing to get married, let me know and the household will arrange it for you. If you don't want to, you can stay there for the rest of your life. Don't ever step into the Shi household again. If I find out, you don't need to stay in the village anymore. Just go back to your home. Gu Fengzi suddenly raised her head and her heart was shaken. She widened her eyes and stared at Shi Fengju in disbelief. Then she turned her head and stared at Wang. Seeing that her aunt, who had always been on her side, didn't say anything, it was obvious that she had no objections to her big cousin's arrangement. Her face turned snow-white in an instant. Chapter 313. Aunt. Gu Fengzi called out in a trembling voice, her voice full of despair. Ai. Wang sighed and avoided her gaze. Aunt, say something. Gu Fengzi suddenly stood up and said in a trembling voice. Aunt, what is going on? What did Fenger do wrong? Shi Fengju saw her disgust and coldly said, Aren't you tired of pretending all day long? Do you think everyone in the world is a fool? Wan Yang falling into the water in White River Town has nothing to do with you. You still don't know, right? That old nun from Plum Blossom Nunnery has confessed everything. And the people you sent over, they've all confessed. It wasn't easy for Sangwon to return to the manor after surviving a great calamity. It wasn't easy for her to be pregnant with my child. Not only did you not repent, you even went from bad to worse. Humph. Don't tell me you don't know what's going on with these rumors in the manor. Gu Fengzi, tell me, you have schemed against my wife time and time again. Do you still want to stay? Fenger, you shouldn't be so muddle-headed. Wang sighed. Go for the sake of my dead sister. Fortunately, Wan Yang is safe and sound. Go. Gu Fengzi was unable to express the shock, pain, and disappointment in her heart. She said with tears in her eyes. Big cousin, are you sure that I did this? I was wrongly accused. Someone set me up. I was wrongly accused. Shi Fengju's eyes became colder. You are still trying to quibble at this time. Why did that old nun from Plum Blossom Nunnery set you up? Don't tell me you are saying that Wan Yang set you up? Gu Fengzi was at a loss for words. In this residence, the person she could rely on the most was Sangwon. After all, she and Sangwon had a conflict of interest. Because of this conflict of interest, Sangwon set her up. This was completely reasonable. However, because of this, Sangwon almost lost her life. No one would be stupid enough to harm others. Shi Fengju smiled coldly and said, If you want to say you're innocent, that's fine. I'll have someone send you to the yamen right now, and let the magistrate have a good look at this case to see if you're innocent or not. No. Don't. Gu Fengzi was trembling all over. She looked at Shi Fengju in horror. Would she still be able to survive after entering the yamen? She wouldn't be able to avoid being interrogated and called for witnesses no matter what. If things really escalated to that point, her life would be completely ruined. She believed that with Shi Fengju's current heart of stone he would definitely do such a thing. Yes. I did it. Gu Fengzi clenched her teeth. She stood up and staggered forward a few steps. Her knees went soft as she knelt in front of Wang and cried, Aunt, you know that I did this because I like eldest cousin. Why did Sangwon come and steal eldest cousin away? I can't accept this. Shi Fengju couldn't believe what he heard. Because she liked him? Because she liked him. She was so crazy to hurt Won Yang. Were the lives of the people on that boat so insignificant in her eyes? You. Wang heard her confess and her heart ached. She said with tears in her eyes. How can you be so stupid? Won Yang was originally engaged to your eldest cousin. You always knew this. But aunt, you also saw it. She was willing to be a concubine, but she didn't forgive me. She can't even tolerate this. How can I accept this? Shi Fengju coldly said. Don't blame everything on Won Yang. Ever since Won Yang married into the family, have you not done anything to her? If Won Yang wasn't smart, I'm afraid that even I would have misunderstood her. I don't know what would happen to her now. For someone like you, who downplays the fact that you plotted to kill someone and even push the blame to someone else, is there anything that you won't do? If Won Yang could tolerate you, then she would be a fool. Don't talk about her. Even I would find you disgusting. Gu Fengzi's face turned red and white. Eldest cousin, you have to show evidence before you speak. Why do you have to wrongly accuse me? Did Sangwon say something to eldest cousin? Does eldest cousin trust her that much? Even at this time, you still haven't forgotten to throw dirty water on Won Yang. Shi Fengju shook his head. Gu Fengzi, you're really hopeless. Didn't I say it before? Don't treat people as fools. Won Yang has never been a talkative person, and I have eyes to see and a brain to think. You're really hopeless. Let's not talk about anything else, Shi Fengju coldly smiled. Gu Fengzi, how long has it been since your father passed away? Let me think, it's only been a little over a month. What did you say to me that day when I went to Peony Park? You pounced on me and undressed, saying that you wanted to consummate the marriage with me. Gu Fengzi, is this something a daughter should do? You said that you forgave your father, and that you were his daughter after all, so you had to stay by his coffin. Is this what you did? Gu Fengzi didn't think that he would say this in front of Wang. Her face instantly turned red and white, and she was incomparably ashamed. Wang's eyes widened in shock. Feng, is this true? How could this be? How could this be? In today's world, filial piety was more important than the heavens. The imperial court even had a saying of filial piety and integrity, and this filial piety was ranked before integrity. Officials had to grieve when their parents passed away, and commoners didn't observe filial piety for their parents. That was against the laws of the world, and doing such a thing during the period of filial piety was even more unforgivable. After Gu Jin passed away, Gu Fengzi used this matter to gain a lot of sympathy and affection in front of Wang. In Wang's eyes, although her father wasn't like a father, she was a good daughter who was filial and tolerant, who knew that she wasn't. Wang's heart was suddenly filled with a myriad of emotions, and she felt like her illusion had been shattered. Mother, Shi Fengju coldly said. Did you see that? This woman is two-faced and two-faced. Her words can't be trusted at all. She treats her father like this, mother. How much sincerity do you think she has towards you? All these years, you've been deceived by her. Big cousin, Gu Fengzi's tears streamed down. I'm just afraid. I'm really afraid. I'm afraid of losing you. I had no choice but to do what I did. Big cousin, we've been childhood sweethearts for so many years, and you've been so good to me. But when Sangwon came, everything changed. Have you ever thought about my feelings? Everything she has should have been mine. I've worked so hard for so many years, and I can only watch her take away what originally belonged to me little by little. Do you know how much pain I feel in my heart? Big cousin, I'm not reconciled. I'm not reconciled to let her live so freely while I have nothing at the side. I'm really not reconciled. Big cousin, no matter what I do, it's all because I care about you and like you. You're wrong, Shi Fengju stared at her and said. The one you care about is not me, and the one you're not reconciled to is not me. It's just the Shi family's wealth and status. It belongs to you? Gu Fengzi, you've long known that all of this has never belonged to you. My fiancé is Won Yang, and you've always known that. Yes, I was wrong back then, and I don't want to talk about those things anymore. I've told you before that as long as you're willing to get married, I'll find a good family for you and make you the legal wife in a dignified manner. This is also my compensation to you. But you refused, and no matter what I said, you refused. Instead, you went crazy and did such a thing. Gu Fengzi, you only have yourself to blame now that things have turned out this way. Gu Fengzi glared at him fiercely. Her heart was filled with raging waves of anger and bitterness. She said hatefully, "Don't say any more. Anyway, in your eyes you can't see a single bit of good in me. So why say so much? Haha, find a good family for me? No matter how good a family is, can it be compared to the Sure family? No matter how good a family is, how can it be compared to your childhood sweetheart? You're clearly looking for an excuse to push me out of the door. Now that you've gotten what you wanted, why say so much?" Shi Fengju did not speak anymore, and his eyes were cold. Wang was startled, and she sighed softly. Her heart turned to ashes, and the gaze she used to look at Gu Fengzi gradually turned cold. No matter how good a family is, can it be compared to the Shi family? She kept saying that she was unwilling, and it was true. It wasn't because of anything else, but because no matter how good a family is, can it be compared to the Shi family? She couldn't give everything that the Shi family could. Fengju was right. She could disregard other people's lives and be unfilial to her father. But how sincere could she be to herself? At the end of the day, it was just that he could protect her and support her. She suddenly thought of many things in the past. Sure enough, every time her son wanted to do something, she was the one who stood up for him. Thinking of this, Wang's heart turned even colder. Gu Fengzi blurted out some words in a moment of anger, but when she saw Wang's expression turn cold, just like Shi Fengju's, she was startled and quickly called out, "Aunt." Wang waved her hand. "Feng, we're still relatives, so listen to your big cousin. Go to the country house and stay there for a while. You should calm down and think about it carefully. If there's anything, we'll talk about it after the new year." Gu Fengzi's body turned cold, and her face turned ashen. What was there to talk about after the new year? She clearly knew that the little Lunar New Year was already over, and there were only 4 to 5 days left before the new year. Yet, she still insisted on chasing her out of the household. It was clear that she didn't care about their old relationship anymore. Talk about it after the new year? Gu Fengzi's heart turned sour. She didn't believe that there was anything to talk about after the new year. This was clearly an excuse to evade the responsibility. In this world, there was no such thing as familial love. Nothing could be relied on. "Yes, Aunt." Gu Fengzi clenched her fists and wanted to scream and vent. But she knew that she had nothing left. No matter how unbearable it was, she had to endure it. "I'll send someone to call you tomorrow morning. You can leave now," Shi Fengju said coldly. "Aunt, take care. Big cousin, you take care too." Gu Fengzi wiped her tears and bowed to the two of them. She turned around and slowly walked out with her head lowered. Inside the room, the mother and son were silent for a while. It was Wang who spoke first. She forced a smile and said, "Go back and accompany Wan Yang. She's pregnant, so it's inevitable that she'll be delicate. I want to be alone for a while." Shi Fengju nodded and stood up, saying, "Mother, you don't have to be sad over this kind of person. She's the one who let you down. You don't have to be like this." "I know." Wang sighed and recovered from her initial shock. She only felt sad and sad. "I just feel that it's a pity. How did she become like this?" Sigh. Chapter 314. Shi Fengju remained silent. Speaking of this matter, Shi Fengju's contribution was not small. If it weren't for Shi Fengju's constant protection, she would have been taught a lesson and wouldn't have ended up in this situation. She caused Wan Yang to end up in this state, yet Shi Fengju let her off so easily. "I've already let Wan Yang down." Shi Fengju hoped that Shi Fengju's shadow would no longer appear in the Shi family's life from now on. Otherwise, the last trace of affection would be gone. "Mother, the child in Wan Yang's belly is indeed mine. I am well aware of this. I hope that Mother won't have any prejudice against Wan Yang because of this. She and I don't care about other people's opinions, but you are my mother. The child in her belly is your biological grandson," Shi Fengju said seriously. Wang nodded and smiled. "Since you've already said so, how can Mother not believe you? Besides, Wan Yang doesn't seem like that kind of person." If anyone dares to say such baseless things in the household again, I won't let them off easily. Mother, it's good that you think so. Shifengju smiled, bowed, and retreated. Shifengju had been gone for a long time. Seeing that the night had darkened, Sangwon gradually began to feel uneasy. Finally he was back. She let out a sigh of relief and went forward with a smile. Shifengju's heart warmed when he saw her. He couldn't help but take 2 steps forward, held her hand, and led her inside. It's cold outside. Why didn't you wait inside? Have you had dinner? Sangwon shook her head. I wanted to wait for you to come back. How was it? Did you make it clear to her? Did she agree? Now that she was pregnant, she didn't want to be distracted by a woman who harbored evil intentions and could stir up trouble at any time. Naturally, she couldn't wait for her to leave quickly. It's not up to her whether she agrees or not, Shifengju coldly snorted and said. I'll send her away tomorrow morning. Wanyang, she'll never appear in the Shi family again. She'll never appear in our lives again. That's good. Sangwon felt relieved and nodded. Wanyang. Shifengju suddenly held her hand tightly, his burning eyes filled with gentleness and guilt. She's caused you so much suffering, but I let her off so easily. Do you resent me in your heart? Resent? Of course there were. When he thought about how he had almost lost his life in the river and how each day felt like a year, how could he not be resentful? Of course I can't. But now that I'm back, I don't want to be calculative. As long as she's gone left, let's just forget it. After all, she is your cousin. Your family's is yours? Wanyang. Shifengju's heart ached when he heard this. He suddenly pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. Wow, I won't let you be wronged again. I won't. Sangwon leaned into his arms and gently rubbed against him. Early the next morning, an old maid urged Gu Fangzi to get on the carriage and leave the fu. Gu Fangzi insisted on seeing Shifengju before leaving. Although the old maids were ordered to send her away, this matter wasn't made public. No one knew that Miss Gu was almost driven out of the fu. Seeing her insistence, they didn't dare to urge her. Gu Fangzi smiled and didn't go to Ning Garden to find her. She waited at the second gate. When Shifengju went out, she called out, "Eldest cousin," and stopped him. "Why haven't you left yet?" Shifengju stared coldly at the consul's servant, causing her to feel a chill in her heart. "Eldest cousin, don't blame them," Gu Fangzi said with a smile. "Don't worry, I'm just going to say a few words to you. Just a few words." Shifengju stared at her deeply and walked to the side. Gu Fangzi pursed her lips and smiled. She tightened her cloak and slowly followed him. The old maids waited silently. A few daring ones quietly looked over. They didn't know what Miss Gu said to eldest young master, but eldest young master's expression suddenly changed. He stared at Miss Gu coldly and didn't say a word. Miss Gu didn't seem to care. She smiled and said a few more words, then turned and walked away. Seeing Gu Fangzi disappear in front of him, Shifengju sneered and strode out. In Ning Garden, Sangwon received the news that Gu Fangzi really got on the carriage and left the Shi family. Her heart finally relaxed and her delicate hand unconsciously stroked her flat stomach. Shifengju returned in the evening. Sangwon greeted him with a smile. Shifengju smiled and said a few words to her. The gloomy atmosphere in the fu was finally swept away. After dinner, the two chatted in the warm room. Shifengju suddenly asked with a smile, "Wanyang, do you still remember Lingyan Mountain Villa?" Sangwon froze. She didn't know why he would suddenly mention it. She smiled and nodded. "Of course I remember. You took me there before." Shifengju smiled and said, "Do you like it there? Why don't I transfer the manor to you? What do you think?" Sangwon could not help but let out a pff and chuckled. "Why are you suddenly talking about this? Why would you transfer it to me? It's the same if it's under your name." "How can it be the same?" Shifengju smiled and said, "If it's under your name, you'll have something to rely on in the future. Although you have a monthly allowance, how can it be enough? You spend a lot of money on everyday things. Just the reward for the servants was not a small sum of money. I just remembered that ever since you married me, you've never asked me for money." Sangwon felt that his words were becoming more and more strange and ridiculous. She was secretly surprised. She smiled and said, With you here, I can rely on you. Why would I need a villa to rely on? I didn't ask you for money because you gave me a lot. I don't need that much, so I didn't ask. Really? Shi Fengju's eyes suddenly became deep. Wan Yang really thinks of me as someone to rely on? Such a gaze made Sangwon feel a little unbearable, and she felt a little flustered. She still forced a smile and nodded, softly letting out an N. Shi Fengju chuckled and asked, Wan Yang, since that's the case, what's the deal with Lu Luo Villa and the 200 mu of fertile farmland and dozens of mu of mountainous land? Can Wan Yang tell me about it? When he suddenly mentioned this matter, Sangwon's face turned snow-white. She was so shocked that her eyes widened and she forgot to react for a moment. Seeing her reaction, Shi Fengju's heart turned cold. Gu Fengzi's mocking and cynical words rang in his ears. Big cousin, didn't you always say that I'm greedy for the Shi family's wealth and that I'm selfish and only like myself in my heart? Do you know that the woman in your hands might not be of the same mind as you? She already has other plans and is looking for a way out. It's funny that big cousin still kept it in the dark. Didn't eldest cousin ask her why she bought the farmstead behind your back? Does the young mistress of the Shi family need to use the name of a maidservant to buy property? Sangwon, what are you trying to do by using Lu Ye's name to purchase those properties behind the Fu's back? That's what you're relying on. Shi Fengju's tone was indescribably bitter. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. I really didn't expect that you would feel so insecure when you're with me. So much so that you have to do this. If you want land, manor, or shops, you just have to say it and I can get it for you. Why do you have to do this? Why do you need to use the name of a maidservant? In your heart, what do you see me as? Shi Fengju slowly got up and glanced at her, before turning to leave. Fengju. Sangwon rushed forward and hugged him from behind. She leaned against his back and pressed her cheek tightly against his body. With tears in her eyes, she said, Fengju, it's not like that, it's not like that. Those were bought in the past. Now I don't think of it that way. In the past? Shi Fengju asked. In the past you thought of it that way? Those properties were bought after they consummated their marriage and became a loving couple. When he thought of how he treated her wholeheartedly during those sweet days, and how he wished he could give her the best that he could, but she had other thoughts, Shi Fengju felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. The person behind him stiffened. Then he heard her say yes. So it was really like that. Shi Fengju was so upset that his heart was split into two. He forcefully tried to pry her hands away. Fengju. But she refused to let go and cried. Fengju, I've said it before. That was in the past. I'm really afraid. Gu Fengzi, she. Afraid that I won't be able to fulfill my promise to you. Shi Fengju's voice was cold. Yes. Sangwon admitted without hesitation. You've been childhood sweethearts with her for so many years. She has her mother to back her up, but I have nothing. I'm not as good as my sister-in-law, who has a strong family. The only thing I can rely on is your pity. Fengju, if you were me, would you feel at ease? When I first set up the manor and farmland, I did indeed have a backup plan as a last resort in case I had no other choice. If one day you don't want me anymore, how can I go home and embarrass big brother and sister-in-law? It wasn't easy for them to send me off, so how can I bring back a divorce letter for them? But where can a weak woman like me go? If I have a few fields to live on, I'll let it go. Although you've promised me that you'll find a way to send her away, but Fengju, there are things in this world that can't be done just because you've promised. You've always been filial and know how to look at the big picture. Can you really disregard your mother's feelings for me? I want to believe you, but reality tells me that it's impossible. Fengju, there was a time when we were about to give up, right? Ask yourself, if I hadn't met with such a disaster, would you have been so determined to chase her away? I've made a plan for myself to have peace of mind. What's wrong with that? Shi Fengju was stunned for a moment. He wanted to refute, but he had to admit that what she said was right. In the end, he had thought too simply of his cousin whom he had known since young. He didn't think that such a simple matter would become so complicated, to the point where they would fight to the death. He had told her that he would protect her, and that she wouldn't have to worry, but in the end, she was implicated because of him. If not for her luck, if not for a coincidence, he wouldn't have been able to see her again in this lifetime. Chapter 3:15. Shi Fengju suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He was really crazy. How could he be provoked by Gu Fengzi with just a few words? Now that she was back, that was more important than anything else. She was pregnant with his child, so why should he care about what happened in the past? So what if he bought a business? In any case, she could forget about leaving his side for the rest of her life. Hearing the sobbing sounds behind him, Shi Fengju's heart softened and his stiff body gradually relaxed. He raised his hand and hesitated for a moment before gently placing it on her slightly cold hand. He whispered, "What about now? Do you still feel the same way?" No. Sangwon hugged his hand tightly and shook her head repeatedly. She stuck close to his back and sobbed. "Fengju, I don't want to really. How about you?" Shi Fengju's tone was a little tense and stiff, as if he was looking forward to it. Sangwon's face suddenly turned red. She wanted to say the words in her heart, but she didn't know it was so difficult. I don't want to leave you. Fengju, I don't want to leave you, never again." Shi Fengju smiled silently. He turned around and held her shoulder as he asked softly, "Do you like me?" Sangwon quickly nodded and raised her slightly red and swollen eyes to look at him. With a heavy nasal sound, she said, "Fengju, if I don't like you, why would I go through so much trouble to return to your side? Fengju, don't be angry with me, okay?" Shi Fengju's heart had already softened, but he still said indifferently, "You're not willing to say that you like me, so how can I believe you? I want to hear it from you personally." Sangwon was slightly embarrassed. Seeing that he didn't seem to be joking, she lowered her eyes and said softly with a red face, I like you." Shi Fengju couldn't help but chuckle when he saw her embarrassed look. He sighed and said, "It's so hard for you to say it out loud. My Wanyang, I like you too." "Fengju." Sangwon threw herself into his arms. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Don't be angry." Shi Fengju hugged her and gently patted her shoulder. He sighed and said, "In the end, I'm the cause. How can I be angry with you? Wanyang, go back and change the name of the manor. Don't hide it anymore. If you want anything in the future, just tell me directly. Do you understand?" And Sangwon lifted her head from his embrace and smiled at him. Shi Fengju lowered his head and kissed her lips. He said softly, "Look at you, you're crying over such a small matter. Are you feeling any discomfort? You're pregnant. You're not allowed to cry anymore." Sangwon felt embarrassed. She blushed and said, I was just feeling anxious. You said those words so coldly and even walked away." Shi Fengju quickly covered her mouth to stop her from continuing. He smiled and said, "When I suddenly heard about it, you actually admitted it so shamelessly. How can I not be angry? But even if I'm angry, I won't be estranged from you because of this matter. At most, I'll just go out to take a breather. It wasn't easy for me to find you, so how can I let you go so easily? What's more, you're pregnant with my child. Shi Fengju, will never do anything that will cause me to lose out." Sangwon chuckled at his words and gave him a look of annoyance. Shi Fengju felt an itch in his heart. He carried her to sit down and placed her on his lap. He caressed her smooth and delicate face with a faint fire and desire in his eyes. Sangwon was startled and subconsciously wanted to struggle. Shi Fengju tightened his grip and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't touch Wanyang. Let me hug you properly, I'll hug you." Sangwon softened her body and let him hug her. She hesitated for a while before saying, "Fengju, Nanny asked me yesterday if we should sleep in separate rooms." As Sangwon spoke, there was a tinge of jealousy in her tone. Sleep in separate rooms? Shi Fengju was unhappy when he heard that. Why should we sleep in separate rooms? Shi Fengju, I'm not a beast. Why would I do something that I shouldn't do? But won't you feel uncomfortable? Sangwon's voice became even softer. A pregnant wife was unable to serve her husband. Logically speaking, it was time to prepare a bed warmer to serve him. If it was in the past, Sangwon would not have asked him and would have virtuously prepared it for him. But now she did not know why, but just talking about it made her feel uncomfortable and suffocated. Uncomfortable? Shi Fengju curled his lips and smiled mischievously. He whispered into her ear. Of course I'm upset. You and I were so loving before, but now, I can't even touch you. How can I not be upset? Sangwon felt even sadder after hearing that. She endured it and pretended to smile casually. It's my fault as a wife for forgetting to think of this for you. Tomorrow I'll let Nanny take a look. Look at what? Shi Fengju asked with a smile. Sangwon was secretly annoyed. What do you want me to look at? Why are you asking when you already know the answer? She said unhappily. Or if you have someone you like, you can just tell me. It'll save me and Nanny a lot of trouble. Sangwon could no longer sit calmly in his arms. She struggled to get up in a fit of pique. Wanyang. Shi Fengju held her down forcefully and sighed. You're obviously unhappy. Why do you have to say and do this? You're unhappy, and you're making me unhappy. You're unhappy? Sangwon was stunned and looked up at him. Shi Fengju held her face and gently caressed it. He said with a smile. Wanyang, am I wrong? Sangwon looked down. You're right. I'm unhappy but then it's fine, Shi Fengju said seriously. Wanyang, I don't have the mood to care about these things. So, you don't have to be a virtuous wife. Isn't it better for the two of us to have a good life together? Why do you have to get another person and cause chaos in the household? When the time comes, you'll be upset, and I'll be upset too. Since you don't blame me, then I'll take your words seriously. Sangwon suddenly smiled. She didn't take the initiative to think about this matter. Since Mama Li mentioned it to her, she couldn't not mention it to Shi Fengju. When she said it, she felt uncomfortable. Hearing him say it, she naturally couldn't ask for more. Shi Fengju chuckled. If you take it seriously, then that's what I mean. Now that you have a child, I believe Mother won't say anything. As long as you can give birth, it's fine. Even if it's not a son, there's still a long way to go. Sangwon's heart relaxed and she happily leaned into his embrace. She said softly, Fengju, I like you. I won't allow you to touch another woman. Just thinking about it makes my heart ache. Shi Fengju felt a little satisfied and said softly, Don't worry. Mama Li saw that the two still had no intention of sleeping separately, and couldn't help but feel anxious. After 2 days of anxiety, she finally couldn't bear it anymore and personally advised Shi Fengju. Young master, it's better if you move to the side room to sleep. Old slave has already asked someone to clean it up. Young mistress is pregnant and her body is precious. Young master, it's better if you don't disturb her. Shi Fengju found it funny and annoying at the same time. How did he become disturbing her? He smiled and said, Nanny, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. I won't make Wanyang unhappy. She's pregnant with my child. How can I not feel bad for her? I'm just afraid that you'll feel bad for her too much. Mama Li thought to herself. Old slave knows that you're a sensible person. Then go to the side room tonight. Tomorrow, old slave will report to young mistress and choose a clever servant to serve her. What do you think? Nanny. Shi Fengju's face darkened slightly. Nanny, I've seen a lot of concubines but I don't want them. You don't have to worry about this in the future. I don't want any more women to come in and mess up this courtyard. Gu Fengzi had just left, and you've already forgotten? From now on, I only want to live a good life with Wanyang. Don't worry. Wanyang is pregnant, and I know the importance of this matter. I have to be by her side to be at ease. Shi Fengju finished speaking and went to see Sangwon. Mama Li was immediately stunned and couldn't recover her senses for a while. Ai. She sighed softly and looked inside. She didn't know what to feel. In short, she was filled with emotions that she couldn't put into words. After thinking about it carefully, she realized that she wasn't against Shi Fengju's idea. Young mistress was a virtuous wife. Young master and young mistress could live a good life together and give birth to a few more young masters and young mistresses. That was actually quite good. As Mama Li thought about it, she looked forward to it, and a smile unconsciously appeared at the corner of her mouth. Gu Fengzi's departure didn't cause the slightest ripple in the household. Shi Fengju ordered Mama Li to pass on the message. Which servant dared to talk about it in private? Miss Gu was just Miss Gu. Young master was the real master of the household. Miss Gu could go anywhere she wanted. As long as her monthly allowance wasn't cut, who would care about anything else? Second old mistress sure and third old mistress sure could vaguely guess the reason behind it. However, this matter had nothing to do with them, and they wouldn't bring it up. In the blink of an eye, it was the new year. On New Year's Eve, just as they were having dinner, the head butler suddenly rushed in with an urgent matter to report to young master. Shi Fengjiu then stood up to listen to his report. As it turned out, Gu Fengzi's farmstead caught fire for some reason. She was also injured by the fire and a physician was called over. The situation was still unclear and no one knew how serious her injuries were. The servants at the farmstead didn't dare to delay, and hurriedly came to report to the household. Shi Fengjiu was disgusted when he heard it, and his brows unconsciously knitted together. She really couldn't stop. What was she trying to do with all this? Creating such a ruckus during the new year? She was clearly trying to make things difficult for others. Luckily, he had already instructed the outer courtyard to report to him privately if anything related to Miss Gu was involved. Otherwise, if this matter were to be brought up at the dinner table, everyone wouldn't be able to have a good time this new year. Shi Fengjiu sneered and said calmly, "Has the fire been saved?" The head butler was stunned and quickly nodded. The servants at the farmstead said that the fire is under control, and there isn't much of a problem. Does young master want to personally ask? No need. Shi Fengjiu raised his hand to stop him from continuing and said plainly, "It's fine as long as it's saved. Invite a doctor to check on everyone. The medical expenses will be paid from the public account. Tomorrow, you will personally send someone to investigate who caused this. If it's a worker, dismiss him. If it's a servant, no matter who it is, beat him up and sell him off. Miss Gu has always been blessed. She won't die and won't be seriously injured. That's all, you may go." Yes. The head butler's heart trembled, and he respectfully retreated. Chapter 316. Gu Fengzi was lying in the simple and crude room that was temporarily arranged, anxiously waiting for someone to report to her. Who knew that other than a middle-level steward Yu, and a personal manservant, there was no one else? Gu Fengzi was stunned. The doctor examined her, and found that it was only a minor flesh wound. He comforted her with a few words, and prescribed some medicine, before going to examine the others. "Steward Yu." Gu Fengzi couldn't be bothered with anything else and asked with a smile, "Did Aunt say anything?" Steward Yu was startled and then smiled. "Young Miss Gu, you're making things difficult for me. Eldest Madam stays in the inner courtyard, and I'm in the outer courtyard. How would I know what Eldest Madam said?" "Then this matter wasn't reported to Eldest Madam? Why didn't Eldest Madam say anything?" Gu Fengzi widened her eyes. Steward Yu shook his head and said, "I don't know about this. Steward Yu instructed me to come and take a look, so I came. As for other things, Steward Yu didn't say anything and I didn't ask." "Oh right, eldest young master did say something. Eldest young master said that young Miss Gu is blessed with good fortune, and will definitely be fine. He even told me to investigate this matter thoroughly. I don't know which bastard caused this kind of trouble during the new year, and caused me to not have a good new year. It's really unlucky." Steward Yu muttered a few curses. "Young Miss Gu, if there's nothing else, I have to hurry back." Gu Fengzi's heart sank, and she was so stunned that she didn't hear Steward Yu's words. Steward Yu disdainfully curled his lips, and couldn't be bothered to ask her again. He snorted and walked out. Stewards weren't fools and they had good connections in the residence. They more or less knew some gossip. Seeing that Gu Fengzi still didn't stop after being chased out of the residence during the new year, and still had the nerve to ask such a question, Steward Yu sneered in disdain. Gu Fengzi stared straight ahead without focus and was dumbstruck. Eldest cousin actually said that. And Aunt didn't say a single word, not even a word of comfort. Human relationships were cold and as thin as paper. She had only been away for a few days, and they had already. 2 lines of tears slowly overflowed from her eyes and flowed down her cheeks. She couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. She gritted her teeth and her body trembled slightly. Sangwon, this is all because of Sangwon. It was all because of that bitch Sangwon. If it wasn't for her, her cousin wouldn't have had a change of heart, her aunt wouldn't have been so cold, and she wouldn't have fallen into such a miserable and lonely situation. It was all Sangwon's fault. I hate you. I really hate you. I can't wait for you to die in my hands. Sangwon, why do I have to bear all this pain while you live so well? I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Gu Fengzi's expression suddenly turned ferocious and cold. Flames of madness flickered in the depths of her eyes, as if they were the wisps from hell. She didn't know how twisted and terrifying her face looked under the dim yellow light. After this incident, Gu Fengzi quietly lived her life and didn't cause any more trouble. In the blink of an eye, it was February. The sun was bright and brilliant. The wind of early spring blew gently, bringing away the chill of winter. The weeping willows by the river had thousands of twigs. Looking from afar, one could already see a faint green. The trees in the garden that had withered for a whole winter had countless rice-sized buds drilled out of the branches. They were only waiting for a gentle spring rain and a warm spring breeze to pass before thousands of branches stretched out and dyed the garden with new green. Wang occasionally thought of Gu Fengzi and sighed. Thinking that it had been a long time, she thought that she should have figured out what to do, so she sent Nanny Jiang to see her and ask her. After all, Gu Fengzi was also at fault for doing such a crazy thing. If not for her blindly conniving, and if not for her stubbornly forcing her son to marry her, things might not have come to this point. Fortunately, Wan Yang returned safely. Regarding this matter, Fengju could do whatever he wanted in the future. She couldn't interfere anymore. However, Gu Fengzi was still young. As long as she agreed to marry, she could find a good family for her, and let her marry far away. They wouldn't have to meet again in the future, and they would both take care of themselves and live their own lives. Who knew that Nanny Jiang would bring back news that Gu Fengzi had sworn that she would rather live in that country house for the rest of her life, and that she had no intention of marrying again. She hoped that old mistress would grant her wish. Wang remained silent for a long time after hearing this. Nanny Jiang advised, "Old mistress, since Gu Fengzi has said so, then let her be. If the cow doesn't drink water, why force it? Since this is her idea, then old mistress should just let her be. Perhaps Gu Fengzi hasn't thought it through yet. Let's wait a little longer. Maybe she will, and it'll be the same when the time comes." Wang nodded and sighed. "You're right. If the cow doesn't drink water, what's the use of forcing it? No matter how much I meddle, I'm just not a person. Since she said so, then let her be. Oh right, it'll be Guanin's birthday on the 19th of February soon. Don't forget to tell Wan Yang that she should go to Guanin's temple to offer incense and pray so that Guanin can bless the safety of both mother and son. Mama Li is already preparing for this. Old mistress, don't worry." Nanny Jiang replied with a smile. Wang nodded and smiled. Wang was a Buddhist. Every year on the 19th of February, she would go to Guanin's temple to offer incense. There was even a child giving Guanin in the temple, which was very efficacious. Now that Sangwon was pregnant, it was natural for her to go and pay her respects. Although Sangwon had suffered a lot before, this pregnancy was very stable. The child in her belly was very obedient and didn't disturb her much. Unlike other pregnant women who vomited, had chest tightness, couldn't stand the smell, and couldn't eat. She was fine with everything. Wang and Shifengju were very happy. On the 19th of February, Sangwon got up early in the morning to freshen up and prepare to go to the temple to offer incense. Other than Wang and second old mistress, Zhou Jingyi didn't go because it was inconvenient for her to move around. Third old mistress sure brought her daughter and her husband to take up a post in the first month of the lunar month. This time, they were indeed in Jiangnan as the prefect of Suzhou. The mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, and sisters-in-law all boarded their respective carriages and headed towards Guanyin Temple on Mount Fenghe outside the city. This Guanyin Temple was located halfway up the mountain and was surrounded by green hills and dense forests. The scenery was very quiet. Because today was one of the most important days for Guanyin, there was an endless stream of devout believers coming to offer incense. At the foot of the mountain, there was a clamor of horse carriages and voices. It was very lively and the smell of incense could be smelled from afar. The group of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law changed to sedan chairs at the foot of the mountain and slowly went up the mountain under the escort of the servants. Although the Shi family was a large family, it was impossible for the nuns in charge of Guanyin Temple to entertain them alone on such a lively day. The head nun personally welcomed them at the mountain gate and politely apologized. She handed the group over to her disciple to entertain them, and hurriedly went to do other things. The disciple smiled and greeted them before leading them to a small courtyard that had been cleaned for them to rest for a while. They drank a cup of tea before going to the main hall to pay their respects. After paying their respects, Wang and second old mistress sure happened to meet some friends, and found another place to talk. Wang then ordered Sangwon to return to the courtyard to rest. With a child in her stomach, Sangwon was afraid that there would be too many people pushing and shoving, so she bowed and excused herself. Not long after she returned to the courtyard, someone delivered a letter saying that an old friend wanted to meet her at the small forest behind the temple. Sangwon's expression changed slightly when she saw the letter. The paper on the letter was yellow, and the handwriting was regular. It should have been written by a scholar on the side of the road. The tone of the letter was clearly from her cousin, Sang Ro, who ran away with her parents' money. Sangwon's heart skipped a beat, and she felt a little uneasy. She did not expect to meet Sang Ro here, but since she did, she was still her cousin after all. Sang Ro's letter made her sound so pitiful, and she could not ignore her. It was not good to tell the people in the household about this. Coincidentally, Luya did not come today, so Sangwon sent everyone away and found an excuse to sneak out alone. Arriving at the forest behind the temple, it was quiet and secluded. She stepped on the thick layer of fallen leaves and made a rustling sound. "Sister, sister." Sangwon looked around and called out twice. "Sister, I'm here." A crisp female voice giggled. Sangwon turned around and her pupils shrank. Her expression changed slightly. Where was Sangro? It was Gu Fangzi. Sangwon could not help but laugh at herself. She was quite well informed and concerned about her family's matters. She even knew about this and could make use of it. "It's you." Sangwon quickly regained her composure and said faintly, "What do you want to do by calling me out?" Gu Fangzi's gaze suddenly turned cold. She glared at Sangwon and sneered. "What do I want to do? I want to kill you and the bastard in your stomach." "You're really crazy." Sangwon shook her head and said. "That's right." Gu Fangzi screamed. "I'm crazy because of you. Sangwon, it's all because of you that I'm in this state today. If not for you, Big Cousin would not have a change of heart. He and I are a match made in heaven. Who knows how happy we would have been? It's all because of you. You're the one who ruined everything for me. You schemed and stole my big cousin, stole everything that originally belonged to me. Sangwon, you're so proud of yourself." Sangwon looked at her calmly and said, "What do I have to be proud of? You, on the other hand, clearly knew that he was engaged, yet you didn't avoid it and insisted on getting close to him. This is your own fault, so how can you blame me?" The marriage between the Shi family and the Sang family was decided by the elders. The marriage was something that would happen sooner or later. Don't tell me you didn't know? After I married into the family, you set up traps to harm me time and time again. What kind of good intentions do you have? Don't tell me I shouldn't be on guard, shouldn't resist, and should be at your mercy until I die. Everything that happened today is your own fault. You can't blame anyone else. You're spouting nonsense. Gu Fangzi screamed. Her face turned red and white. She glared at Sangwon and said hatefully, "You're spouting nonsense. You're spouting nonsense. Big Cousin and I were childhood sweethearts. We were childhood sweethearts. His wife should be me, not you. You shouldn't have married him. You shouldn't have married him at all. You wanted to steal what belongs to me, so why can't I plot against you? If not for you, everything wouldn't have turned out like this." Chapter 317. She was simply crazy. Sangwon shook her head and sighed softly. "Up to you. Think whatever you want. I'm going back." She really did not understand why Gu Fangzi was so stubborn. She grew up in the Shi family, and both Wang and Shi Fengju treated her well. If she wanted to marry, what kind of good family could she not marry? In the future, the Shi family would definitely support her. In this lifetime, she would not have to worry. She really did not understand why she was so bent on fighting her to the death. She was clearly the one at fault, yet she made it sound as if she had a deep grudge against her, as if she owed her. There was nothing to say to such a person. Stop right there. Gu Fangzi smiled coldly and blocked her in an imposing manner. Her snake-like eyes stared unscrupulously at Sang Wan. What are you trying to do? Sang Wan's heart tightened. It was only then that she realized that Gu Fangzi today was a little different from usual. In the past, no matter how much she hated her, she would always have a faint smile on her face and a reserved and graceful expression on her face. She had never seen such an unscrupulous display of coldness and viciousness like today. What am I trying to do? Gu Fangzi giggled. I knew that you would definitely come to this temple today. I've waited so long for this day. What do you think I'm trying to do? Sang Wan, as long as you're dead, everything will still be mine. Big cousin will also return to my side. Time can change everything. Sang Wan, I want your life. Clang. Gu Fangzi pulled out a shiny dagger from her bosom and held it in her hands with bright red fingernails. She held it tightly and raised it, approaching Sang Wan. You. Sang Wan's legs went soft and she subconsciously retreated. Her hand subconsciously touched her lower abdomen. She did not expect Gu Fangzi to be so bold. She actually carried a dagger with her and wanted to take her life personally. Gu Fangzi laughed when she saw her dodging. She sneered. Sang Wan, you didn't expect that you would have a day like this, did you? That's great. It's more straightforward this way. As long as you die, everything will be over. Fengju won't let you off. Do you think you can escape unscathed after killing me? Sang Wan's heart was thumping so hard that it almost jumped out of her throat. Shut up. Gu Fangzi said fiercely. Big cousin's name is not for you to say. Fengju is mine. Fengju is mine. She raised her eyebrows and stabbed towards Sang Wan like a madwoman. Sang Wan screamed and hurriedly dodged. Gu Fangzi was so angry that her hands trembled slightly. She lost control of her aim, and Sang Wan narrowly avoided the attack. She became even more furious. She screamed and waved the dagger in her hand madly towards Sang Wan's face. Sang Wan was shocked and dodged awkwardly. She felt a sharp pain on her arm, and there was a cut. Fresh blood seeped out and dyed her sleeve red. Gu Fangzi laughed complacently and said through gritted teeth, Sang Wan, die. Sang Wan stumbled and fell to the ground. Gu Fangzi stabbed towards her fiercely. She rolled to the side and her hairpins fell to the ground. She narrowly avoided the attack again. The sharp edge of the dagger shone brightly. Sang Wan hurriedly closed her hands and stretched out her hand. Coincidentally, she managed to grab onto Gu Fangzi's wrist that was holding the dagger. She was delighted and quickly held onto Gu Fangzi's wrist tightly. Gu Fangzi was furious. She shouted and glared at Sang Wan. She clenched her teeth and used all her strength to turn the dagger towards Sang Wan's direction. Sang Wan was so shocked that her face turned pale. But how could she just give up? She clenched her teeth and pushed the dagger away with all her might. The two of them wrestled and rolled on the ground. A withered branch fell from the tree and hit Gu Fangzi's head. She was stunned and lost her strength. Sang Wan couldn't retract her strength in time, and the dagger suddenly turned around. With a pu sound, the dagger fiercely stabbed into Gu Fangzi's chest. Time seemed to stop at this moment. The two of them were stunned. Gu Fangzi opened her large almond eyes and stared at Sang Wan. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness, indignation and disbelief. Her body stiffened and she slowly lowered her head. She saw that the dagger was stabbed into her chest. Blood flowed out and instantly dyed her chest red. She didn't dare to believe that this was real. But her eyes told her that everything she saw was real. The intense pain hit her and Gu Fangzi groaned like a bellows. Her eyes suddenly rolled back, and her body fell limply to the ground. She lay on the ground lifelessly. Blood gushed out from her chest like a fountain. In an instant, the ground was dyed bright red. Sang Wan screamed and hurriedly sat up. She gasped for breath and calmed herself down. She stretched out a trembling finger to test Gu Fangzi's nose. There was no breath at all. Sang Wan screamed and retreated. She hugged herself into a ball and trembled uncontrollably. Her limbs were sore and cold and she couldn't move at all. There was only one thought going back and forth in her mind. I killed someone. I've killed someone. I've actually killed someone. No, no. Sangwon's gaze was a little unfocused from fear. She screamed and tried her best to move back. She was so anxious that tears streamed down her face. Young mistress. So you're here. Xingji and the other nuns from the temple rushed over and said with a smile. Seeing her in a sorry state and trembling state, Xingji was shocked and quickly rushed forward to help her. Young mistress, what happened to you? Ah. Someone died. Someone died. There's so much blood, so much blood. A nun suddenly pointed at Gu Fangzi and screamed. Xingji and the others looked at the woman on the ground. The pool of blood was shocking and made them tremble. They couldn't help but scream with a pale face. In the prison of the Qingzhou Yamen, Sangwon quietly hugged her knees and sat on the bed by the wall. Fortunately, the Shi family had a big business and had a good relationship with Magistrate Hong. With the relationship between Third Old Master Shi and Sang Yufei. Although Sangwon was imprisoned, she didn't suffer any mistreatment. The prison cell was also a single cell. The floor was very clean and the bedding was brand new. There was even a lamp and incense on the table. But even so, a prison was still a prison. No one could change the dampness and the stench. What's more, Sangwon had just received a huge shock and almost had a miscarriage. She had finally managed to calm herself down. But she was sent here right after. She blankly hugged her knees and sat in a corner of the bed. Her head was buried in her knees. Her face was pale and her body was trembling. She bit her pale lips and recalled the terrifying scene in the morning. She still felt terrified and felt like she was in a dream. Her mind was completely blank. She actually killed someone. Gu Fangzi actually died in her hands. Dull and monotonous footsteps came from afar, but Sangwon was unaware of it. She was still immersed in her own world. Only when the iron lock on the prison cell clanked did she gently raise her head and look over. Her eyes suddenly lit up and she cried, "Fengju, Fengju." She ran over without a care for anything else. Wan Yang. Shi Fengju came in and quickly hugged her. "Fengju. It wasn't me, it really wasn't me. I didn't want to kill her, I didn't." Sangwon hugged Shi Fengju tightly with all her strength. It was as if she was hugging a life-saving straw, the last thing she could rely on. It was as if he would disappear if she let go. Tears streamed down her face. She cried until her voice was choked with sobs. Her words were incoherent. She hugged him tightly and refused to let go. I know. Shi Fengju saw how frightened she was and felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He gently patted her back and comforted her softly. Wan Yang, don't cry, I know. Don't cry, come, let's sit down and talk. Shi Fengju wanted to pull her away, but Sangwon hugged him even tighter. No, don't leave me, Fengju, don't. How could I leave you behind? Shi Fengju sighed and forcefully pried her hands away. He held her cold hands in his palms and kissed them lovingly. Wan Yang, don't be like this, you still have a child in your stomach. If you keep crying like this, you'll hurt the child. You're my wife, how could I leave you behind? I'll get you out of here, don't worry. Child. Sangwon was startled and her expression changed slightly. She hurriedly stopped crying and looked at him blankly. Really? You'll really get me out of here? Of course. No matter what price I have to pay, I'll get you out of here. Wan Yang, I won't leave you behind. Shi Fengju saw that her emotions had stabilized and his heart relaxed. He hugged her and sat on the edge of the bed. He forced a smile and said, Wan Yang, don't be afraid. Sangwon looked at him blankly and suddenly cried again. I can't get out. Fengju, I really killed her, she really died in my hands. Wan Yang. Shi Fengju gently covered her mouth and asked softly, what exactly happened, tell me. Wan Yang, you're not allowed to mention what you said just now, understand? You don't blame me? Sangwon looked at him with a puzzled expression. Shi Fengju smiled bitterly and sighed. Wan Yang, do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? Why would you kill her? Moreover, today was Guanin's birthday. Sangwon went to the temple to pray for herself and the child in her womb. Even if she had such thoughts, she wouldn't have done it today. Shi Fengju was well aware of this point. On the other hand, Gu Fangzi. Fengju. Thank you for believing in me. Sangwon could not help but sob as tears rolled down her cheeks. Her heart felt sour. Don't cry. Shi Fengju wiped away her tears and kissed her gently on the cheek. He hugged her and said softly, "Tell me quickly what exactly happened." Sangwon replied with a nasal voice, "N." She then told Shi Fengju everything that had happened. "I didn't think that she would be so crazy. I really didn't want her life. But she died in my hands. Fengju, Wan Yang, you didn't do anything wrong." Shi Fengju sighed and said, "She asked for it and reaped what she sowed. It's not your fault, Wan Yang. Wan Yang, don't drag yourself into this, understand? Also, don't talk about this anymore. Don't tell anyone. You have to remember that it was her who killed herself by mistake. You didn't kill her. Wan Yang, understand?" Chapter 318. His heart was filled with resentment and regret. Regarding Gu Fengzi's death, he did not have the slightest bit of sympathy or pity. That woman was actually so crazy, and that was something he did not expect. This woman was really crazy and haunting. He should have imprisoned her instead of simply chased her out of the manor. Shi Fengju stared at Sangwon with a pair of burning eyes filled with nervousness. If she really admitted it, things would become even more troublesome. Only if she insisted that it was Gu Fengzi who tried to kill someone but failed and accidentally killed herself, could this matter be reduced to a small one. Wan Yang, remember my words. Do you understand? Shi Fengju added. Sangwon was stunned, but she subconsciously nodded and said, "Yes." Wan Yang. Shi Fengju became anxious when he saw her like this. He pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. He said solemnly in her ear, "Wan Yang, you have to remember this clearly. You didn't kill Gu Fengzi. She was the one who accidentally tried to kill you. Do you understand? Wan Yang, think about me. Think about our child." "I understand. I understand. I understand." Sangwon shivered and agreed. Yes, she couldn't leave him like this. She couldn't lose her child like this. She still had a lot of days to live and a lot of roads to walk. She couldn't lose her life in vain. In the first place, Gu Fengzi had only herself to blame for this matter. "It's good that you understand." When Shi Fengju saw that she had finally taken his advice to heart, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He comforted her softly and smiled. "Are you hungry? I brought some food. I'll eat some with you." Sangwon shook her head. "I don't feel like eating." "Wan Yang, even if you don't eat, the child has to eat. Listen to me," Shi Fengju said gently. "You still have to go to court tomorrow. You have to be alert." Sangwon looked at him and reluctantly nodded. Shi Fengju lifted the food box and opened it. He took out the dishes one by one. The dishes in the box were all kept warm with hot water. When they were taken out, they were still steaming hot. 8 treasures tofu, stir-fried shredded eel, stir-fried shrimps, crispy bamboo shoots, ham and pickled vegetables, black chicken soup, and 2 other exquisite Jiangnan side dishes. They were all Sangwon's favorite dishes. However, when faced with the table full of dishes, Sangwon didn't have the slightest desire to taste them. Under Shi Fengju's persuasion, she reluctantly ate half a bowl of soup and a few mouthfuls of food. Then, she felt her chest, she couldn't eat anymore. "If you don't want to eat, then forget it." Shi Fengju's eyes darkened. He knew that she hadn't completely recovered from the shock she received today. He said softly, "I'll bring you some food tomorrow morning." "Are you leaving?" Sangwon trembled and almost jumped up. She suddenly raised her eyes and stared nervously at Shi Fengju. Her eyes were full of fear. She had been in a muddle-headed state for most of the day. She didn't know anything, didn't think about anything, and didn't even know how she came to this prison. It was only when she saw him that she felt a little more alive. However, she suddenly realized that she was now a prisoner and had to stay in this prison. How could he accompany her all the time? Shi Fengju also felt very uncomfortable. If he could, he would rather stay with her, but he knew that it was impossible. Not to mention that the law didn't allow it. He still had many things to take care of and arrange. He couldn't delay any longer. "Wan Yang." Shi Fengju held her hand tightly and said, "Don't be afraid, it's very safe here. No one will dare to do anything to you. If you need anything, just tell the jailer." The housekeeper is staying in an inn near the yamen. The jailer will immediately inform him. Wanyang, I have to go back first to arrange for you to go to court tomorrow. Wanyang, after tomorrow, we can go back and? Really? Sangwon was moved by his words and her expression relaxed. Of course. Why would I lie to you? Shi Fengju smiled. Sangwon nodded and gently let go of him. Fengju, I'll wait for you. And I'll wait for you too. Shi Fengju smiled and gently kissed her cold cheeks and lips before getting up to leave. Sangwon stared blankly at him as he left. When she turned around, her heart turned cold again. In the Shi family, the atmosphere was similarly oppressive and tense. No one would believe that young mistress had killed someone. Not to mention that she killed Miss Gu when she went to pray for blessings. But why would Miss Gu suddenly appear there, and why would young mistress go there? Everyone's hearts were still filled with doubts. Wang had already cried until she had no energy left. Lying on the warm bed, her face was extremely haggard as she lamented to Nanny Jiang over and over again. No matter how muddle-headed she was, she knew that Gu Fangzi was the one who started it. She was unwilling and indignant. Since she could bribe someone to harm Sangwon once, she could do it again. She also knew that on Guanin's birthday, she would definitely go to Guanin Temple to pray. Since Sangwon was pregnant, she would naturally accompany her to pray for blessings. She knew everything. That was why she had planned all of this. Wang did not have time to grieve over her death, but instead, she fell into a deep shock and pain. This kind of ending, was it what she wanted? When she reached the netherworld, would she say that she regretted it? After Shi Fengju returned to the Shi family, he went to see his mother before returning to the study room where the head servant was already waiting to report. There wasn't much time, but it was enough for the Shi family to arrange many things. Today's incident happened at the back of the mountain. Fortunately, Xingji was alert and immediately controlled the nun who led the way and the two women who followed her before reporting to the officials. The back of the mountain was quiet and secluded. Although there were some rumors, the news was well kept under wraps. At least everyone only knew that someone had died, but no one knew the truth. As long as the nun gave false testimony, coupled with the Shi family's wealth and third old master Shi and Sang Yufei's official positions, Magistrate Hong wouldn't be so foolish as to not pursue this matter. Fortunately, Gu Fangzi did not have any relatives in this world. The 2 to 3 distant relatives had long stopped contacting each other. They lived far away from each other, and were also poor. As long as the case was closed, there would be no chance of a comeback. At most, when the Gu family sent people over, they would be sent away with a sum of money. Even so, Shi Fengju still felt nervous when it concerned his loved ones. As for Gu Fangzi, he no longer had any words to describe her. The last bit of affection he had for her had been completely severed. She had really gone mad. She said that she was unwilling and indignant, so what was there to be unwilling and indignant about? Things that did not belong to her in the first place, yet she insisted on not letting go. Why was such a beautiful young woman so stubborn and vicious? In the end, not only did she cause her own death, she also implicated others. Shi Fengju could not bear to return to Ning Garden. After listening to the chief butler's report, he pondered over it carefully and nodded to dismiss him. He then closed his eyes and spent the night in the study room. He woke up at dawn. When he opened the door, Mama Li came in with Luya, whose eyes were red and swollen, to serve him. Seeing Luya biting her lips and looking at him pitifully, Shi Fengju's heart softened and he sighed. "Don't worry, your mistress will be fine." Luya nodded and sobbed. How could a person like young mistress kill people? It must be Gu Fangzi's fault. This servant believes that young master will definitely save young mistress. Luya hated Gu Fangzi to death in her heart, and did not even call her Miss Biao. Shi Fengju nodded slightly and ordered Mama Li, "Nanny, go and see if breakfast is ready. I will send it to Wanyang later." Mama Li hurriedly said, "It's all ready. I cooked bird's nest porridge, wild chicken porridge, stuffed shrimp, mushroom cabbage, crab tofu, and chicken breast meat minced into small steamed buns. I also stewed ham and bone soup. It will be ready in a while." Shi Fengju nodded and did not say anything. After washing up hurriedly, he asked Chang Huan to carry the food box, and they went to the yamen together. The damp and dark environment in the dungeon was terrible. He did not know how Sangwon spent the night, but he did not sleep well the entire night. He fell asleep in a daze and woke up in a dream, thinking about the matter. Fengju, you're here. Sure enough, Sangwon did not sleep well either. Her eyes were swollen, but when she saw him, she hurriedly welcomed him with her bright eyes. Sure, Fengju felt a little sour in his heart as he watched the prison guard open the door to the cell and walked in. Did you fall asleep last night? You look so pale. He pulled her to sit down and caressed her face. I'm fine. Although she did not rest well, Sangwon's heart was much more at ease and her eyes were much clearer. She held Sure Fengju's hand and said, Will the court be held today? Don't worry. Sure Fengju smiled and said, According to the imperial court's law, the court can hold a private hearing in the back hall. There's no need to go to court, so don't worry. Only then did Sangwon feel slightly relieved, and she nodded her head gently. Have you washed up? Eat something. Sure Fengju smiled. Sangwon smiled and said, Just now a servant came over with hot water and tea. I've already washed up. Sure Fengju nodded and laid out the bowls and plates one by one. A pregnant woman would get hungry easily. In addition, she did not have an appetite last night, so she really felt hungry today. Without needing Sure Fengju to call her, she quickly ate. Sure Fengju was gratified and distressed at the sight of her. He kept asking her to slow down. It was not appropriate to stay for too long. After breakfast, Sure Fengju comforted her for a while before leaving in a hurry. Both of them were equally nervous, waiting nervously for Magistrate Hong to bring the case to trial. Unexpectedly, 2 hours passed, and then another, and there was no movement in the yamen. Chang Huan had already gone back and forth several times to inquire about the case. In an inn near the yamen, Sure Fengju paced back and forth uneasily. He scolded Chang Huan for not working diligently, and ordered the chief steward to go and inquire about the case personally. Chang Huan felt wronged and did not dare to make a sound. The chief steward hurriedly left to carry out the order. After a while, he ran back with sweat all over his forehead. He anxiously said to Sure Fengju with a bitter face, Eldest young master, Chang Huan is right. I don't know what happened, but the trial has not started yet. The old slave finally asked his private advisor to come out and inquire about the case. The private advisor stammered and refused to tell the truth. He only said that it was not urgent and asked the old slave to come back and wait patiently. Eldest young master, what do you think is going on? Didn't they talk about it yesterday? Why did it change so suddenly? Chapter 319. Is that true? Sure Fengju's heart tightened. A sense of uneasiness gradually spread from the bottom of his heart and permeated his entire body. Yes, the head butler nodded. The private advisor had received a lot of benefits, but even he didn't dare to say it out loud. It was obvious that the situation had changed greatly. Could it be that someone from the Gu family had come? Sure Fengju immediately shook his head. It had just happened yesterday, and the news had been kept secret. The Gu family couldn't have found out so quickly, let alone come at this time. Even if they came, it was impossible for them to change Magistrate Hong's mind. But other than the Gu family, what other changes could there be? Sure Fengju let out a long sigh and said slowly, I'll wait here. Head butler continued to ask around at the yamen entrance. Once there's any news, report it immediately. Chang Huan, ask someone to pass a message to young mistress. Tell her to wait patiently and be patient. Just pass the message and don't go in. Understand? Since the situation had changed, and even the private advisor didn't dare to say it out loud, Sure Fengju felt that it was better to be cautious. In a situation where the situation was unclear, he couldn't act rashly and give others something to use against him. But if he didn't tell Sangwon, he was afraid that she would be worried. Just as he expected, Sangwon waited anxiously for the entrance. Who knew that after waiting for a long time, there would be no movement at all? She couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Originally, she secretly hoped that this moment would come later, but now, she couldn't wait for it to end as soon as possible. But the more she hoped, the more it didn't come. She couldn't help but feel anxious and restless. She couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. Fortunately, the news from Changhuan was quickly delivered. Although Sangwon was still bewildered, she wasn't as panicked as before. She waited quietly. Soon noon passed and night fell. The head butler ran back and forth a few times. He was so anxious that his face was about to change shape. There was still no movement in the yamen. "Young master, this is really strange. What's going on?" The head butler was in a difficult situation. Shi Fengju's heart was also in a mess. He thought for a while and said, "Let's go back first. Quickly prepare a generous gift. I will pay a visit to the prefect tonight." Despite his instructions, Shi Fengju felt uneasy. He had an ominous premonition that the prefect might not meet him. On this day, compared to the peace outside, Sangwon saw a familiar person whom she had not seen for a long time, Zhao Qi. When Zhao Qi appeared in front of her, Sangwon was so shocked that her face instantly turned pale. She stared at him in a daze, unable to speak. Zhao Qi also fixed his gaze on her, his eyes as gentle as ever. The light-colored clothes on his body made his slender figure look refined and elegant. "Wan Yang, why are you in such a sorry state? Why are you here? Did you suffer?" Zhao Qi retracted his gaze with a faint smile and asked gently. Sangwon couldn't help but shudder. She was still in a daze, unable to speak. Zhao Qi showed some disappointment. "Wan Yang, don't you recognize me?" Sangwon secretly slowed her breathing, bowed and said softly, "Young Marquis." Sangwon was in a mess. Zhao Qi's unexpected appearance gave her a very bad premonition. This man's almost paranoid fanaticism for her was too much for her to handle. She had never thought of reciprocating his feelings. She had her own husband whom she loved deeply. She originally thought that after leaving the capital with Shi Fengju that day, that experience was just a dream. From then on, there would be no connection between them. For the rest of her life, she would never step into the capital again. Naturally, she would never meet Zhao Qi again, and she would never remember everything that had happened in the capital. She didn't expect that Zhao Qi would actually come. "Wan Yang is still so distant to me." Zhao Qi smiled bitterly and said softly, "Wan Yang, do you know how hard it was for me to find you? Finally, the heavens took pity on me and I finally found you." "Young Marquis," Sangwon's voice was a little hoarse, "I beg you to let me go. I already have a husband. Wan Yang." Zhao Qi seemed to be very unwilling to hear her say such things. He impatiently interrupted her. "You came from my residence. I only know that you are Wan Yang. Naturally, you should come back with me. I don't know anything else." "No." Sangwon was shocked. "That's impossible. I have a husband. I like him. Young Marquis, I shouldn't have hidden it from you, but..." "That's right." Zhao Qi's eyes were a little cold. "Since you hid it from me, then you might as well hide it to the end. I don't want to know anything, nor do I need to know. Wan Yang, I only want you to come back with me." Since she left, he hasn't had a day of peace. Every day was a torment. She appeared out of thin air, and made his many years of stagnant water come back to life. He only knew that when he saw her, he felt happy, steady and stable. He couldn't tell whether he was looking at Fei, or Wan Yang, but he knew that he couldn't live without her. After she left, he almost went crazy. It wasn't easy to find out her whereabouts, and he immediately rushed over. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing. For him, this may not be a bad thing. Sangwon bit her lip. "I didn't say it at first because I was instinctively afraid of Madame Zhao. The way she looked at me made me feel uneasy, so I hid my identity for a while. In the end, it was even more inconvenient for me to speak. Young Marquis, I shouldn't have hidden it from you. This is my fault. Please be magnanimous and let me live." Zhao Qi shook his head. "It's too late, Wan Yang. Your only way out is to stay by my side." Sangwon hesitated for a moment, then simply said, "I'm pregnant now. I'm going to be a mother. I can't go with you. Young Marquis is willing to be magnanimous. We husband and wife can't thank you enough." "There's no need." Zhao Qi stared at her belly, which was still not showing, and a strong sense of jealousy and injustice suddenly surged in his heart. He coldly said, "Wan Yang, I don't care really. What does it matter? When you give birth to the child, I will treat him as my own, and your child will be my child. Young Marquis. Sangwon was ashamed and angry, and couldn't help but blush. The timing of her pregnancy was already very awkward. Although the rumors in the household were forcibly suppressed by Shi Fengju, this awkward coincidence was a fact. How could she withstand Zhao Qi's words? Wan Yang, I stopped my mother from coming. I'm sure you know a thing or two about her temper, Zhao Qi said faintly. The Shi family may be big and rich, but if my mother wants to do anything, he. Sangwon's body stiffened, and her face turned pale again. Don't be afraid, Zhao Qi saw the situation and said softly. As long as you stay by my side, there won't be any problems. Have a good rest and wait for me to pick you up. Zhao Qi looked at her deeply after saying that, then turned and left. He subconsciously clenched the hands hanging by his side. This was indeed an excellent opportunity. Wan Yang could use this opportunity to escape, and from then on, there would no longer be a Shi family's young mistress, only his Wan Yang. As for whether this would have any negative impact on the Shi family, or what would happen to Shi Fengju, what did it have to do with him? In the prison, Sangwon's legs went soft, and she almost fell to the ground. At night, a carriage gently stopped at the back of the government office. Shi Fengju alighted from the carriage, and the head butler came forward to knock on the door. Although Shi Fengju's movements were normal, his heart was already boiling like water, burning with uneasiness. Magistrate Hong was carefully talking to Zhao Qi. When he heard that Shi Fengju had come to see him, he frowned and was about to dismiss him when he saw Zhao Qi's indifferent gaze. Magistrate Hong's heart trembled, thinking that the young Marquis had ordered the case to be suspended as soon as he arrived, which showed that he was very concerned about the case. It would be better to inform him about the young master's visit, so he quickly smiled and said respectfully, Zhao Qi was waiting. Even if Shi Fengju didn't come to see him, he would have arranged to see him tomorrow. He smiled and said, since he's here, let him in. Magistrate Hong was slightly surprised, but he didn't dare to ask more and quickly agreed with a smile. When Shi Fengju heard that the magistrate had invited him in, he didn't find a random reason to reject him. He calmed down and slowly walked in with the head butler. When he went to the flower pavilion to pay his respects to the prefect, he saw Zhao Qi, who was dressed in a white robe with a pattern of bamboo leaves. Seeing Zhao Qi looking at him with a faint smile, Shi Fengju was startled. Magistrate Hong didn't dare to put on airs in front of Zhao Qi, so he nodded to Shi Fengju and raised his hand to indicate that he was excused. He then introduced him. This is the young Marquis of Wuwei Manor from the capital. Young Marquis, this is the young master of the Shi family. Shi Fengju only felt dizzy, and his back was drenched in cold sweat. He finally understood why Magistrate Hong suddenly changed his mind today. He didn't expect Zhao Qi to have found out about Wan Yang's identity from somewhere, and come to Qingzhou at this time. But thinking about it, old Mistress Zhao had saved Sangwon from the river. The Shi family's search for the missing young mistress had caused such a huge commotion that they even reported the case to the Yamen. It wouldn't be difficult to find out about it. Shi Fengju sighed inwardly. He was too careless. Zhao Qi actually chased him all the way here, and interfered with the trial of the case today. His intentions were obvious. At the same time, Zhao Qi was also sizing up Shi Fengju with great interest. He was wearing a round neck robe embroidered with dark patterns of lake green silk, a pair of black boots, and a piece of fine mutton fat jade tied around his waist. His hair was tied up with a jade hairpin. His facial features were handsome, his temperament was calm, and his eyes were bright. Although he was a businessman, he didn't have the air of a businessman. Instead, he gave people a sense of elegance and magnanimity. The more he was like this, the more Zhao Qi disliked him. Thinking of how this person dared to steal Wan Yang from his side, how he and Wan Yang were husband and wife, and how they enjoyed many intimate moments together, and how Wan Yang was pregnant with his child, Zhao Qi's face turned even uglier. His gaze gradually turned cold as he stared at Shi Fengju. Shi Fengju was also angry at him. A bigot who only relied on his ancestors' meritorious deeds to bully others. What ability does he have? Wan Yang was his wife, and he would never let him bully her. Chapter 320. But no matter how indignant he was, The other party was a marquis, and he was just a commoner. Commoners had to follow the rules when meeting an official. Shi Fengju could only kneel and bow. This commoner Shi Fengju greets the young marquis. Zhao Qi snorted coldly and smiled faintly. So you are the young master of the Shi family? Hee, it's a pleasure to meet you today. Young marquis is too polite, this commoner doesn't deserve it. Shi Fengju replied flatly. Zhao Qi laughed out loud and raised his eyebrows. Don't deserve it? Young master Shi is too humble. You are not a coward. What's there to be afraid of? Get up. This young master isn't a narrow-minded person who would casually humiliate others. Thank you, young marquis. Shi Fengju stood up gently. Zhao Qi's face turned cold as he snorted. You don't have to thank me, I'm afraid you are scolding me in your heart. Young marquis must be joking. This commoner and the young marquis have no grievances, and we mind our own business. Why would I scold the young marquis in my heart? Is that so? That's for the best. Magistrate Hong listened to the exchange between the two of them. Although their words seemed polite and ordinary, there was a hidden meaning behind it that he did not understand. Magistrate Hong could not help but sweat secretly. He wondered what was going on between young Master Shi and the young Marquis of Wuwei Manor. They did not seem to be friends, but they did not seem to be enemies either. Magistrate Hong, this young master would like to borrow a place to speak with young Master Shi, you see. Magistrate Hong was letting his imagination run wild. He could not wait to have a reason to leave. Hearing this, he quickly smiled and said, Please continue your conversation. This lowly official will take his leave. This lowly official will take his leave. Magistrate Hong cupped his hands and smiled before hurriedly retreating. The parlor suddenly quietened down. The two men also tore away their polite faces and their expressions turned cold. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. What a coincidence. Zhao Qi said lightly. A life for a life, this is a matter of course. Young Master Shi, what do you think? The muscles on Shi Fengju's cheeks twitched violently. I don't understand what you mean. Zhao Qi sneered and said, Don't you understand? If you don't understand, I'll explain it to you. Wan Yang's case is not easy to solve. Shi Fengju was furious. What do you want? He asked coldly. Zhao Qi stared at him and said slowly, I don't want anything. I want Wan Yang. I want her to leave with me. If she doesn't, I won't let you have your way. If Zhao Qi insisted on intervening in Sangwan's case, as long as the nun changed her mind, Sangwan would be charged with murder. Even if it was an accident, it was still murder. Even if the Shi family was willing to part with their wealth and did not have to pay with their lives, they would still have to be punished severely. Sangwan was still pregnant. How could she bear the pain? Zhao Qi was threatening Sangwan's life. Moreover, if the case was successfully closed today, Gu Fengzi's claim that she deserved it would be easier for the public to accept. The longer Sangwan stayed in the yamen, the more rumors there would be, and the more unfavorable it would be for her. He could not allow her to live under the suspicion of the public for the rest of her life. That would be too unfair to her. This case must be closed tomorrow. It must not be delayed any longer. She is my wife, and she is pregnant with my child. Shi Fengju said slowly. Why can't you fulfill her wish? Zhao Qi sneered. This is what I want to say to you, young Master Shi. I will take Wan Yang as my wife, and I will treat the child in her womb as my own. I will treat her well. So what else do you have to say? Haha, who knows, maybe the child in Wan Yang's womb is mine. Shut up. Shi Fengju was so angry that his veins were bulging and his chest was heaving up and down. He was extremely angry. Wan Yang is my wife. She will never betray me. Zhao Qi snorted. Wan Yang has been in my residence for so many days. How could she not know how I treated her? If you didn't appear and she had to leave with you, we would have been so loving. Shi Fengju's face was ashen, and he said coldly, You don't have to sow discord in front of me. I know better than you what kind of person Wan Yang is. Zhao Qi did not argue with him on this issue and said coldly, When Wan Yang is by my side, no one dares to disrespect her or protect her. I can give her anything she wants, and I will not let her suffer the slightest grievance or let her get hurt. But what about you? She has only returned to your side for a short time, and you are already involved in a murder case. In the past, your mother and your cousin didn't treat her very well, did they? I'm afraid that Wan Yang has shed many tears and hurt many hearts in secret. Humph, what was your cousin's name again? It's her good fortune that she died early, otherwise, I would have made her life worse than death. Shi Fengju, Wan Yang has suffered so many grievances because of you. Why do you still want to monopolize her? Shi Fengju felt guilty and heartbroken. He gritted his teeth and said, I won't do it again. I promise Wan Yang that I will only have her in this life, and I will only live in harmony with her in the future. I can give her everything she wants. Don't you think it's too late? Zhao Qi said disdainfully. What you said now sounds good, but what if Wan Yang can't give birth to a son, and can only give birth to a daughter? I don't care at all, but you don't care either? Even if you don't care, will your mother not care? It seemed that the conversation between the young master and Lord Hong wasn't very pleasant. The light in the study room was lit all night. Shi Fengju didn't sleep at all. Countless scenes of the past flashed through his mind, but his ears kept hearing Zhao Qi's words tonight. Zhao Qi seemed to be even crazier than Gu Fengzi. Shi Fengju understood that a madman could do anything. How could he just watch Wan Yang suffer? However, how could he bear to give Wan Yang to Zhao Qi with both hands? Zhao Qi and Sang Wan also didn't sleep that night. Each of them had their own feelings. No matter what kind of thoughts they had, the sky was still bright as usual. Shi Fengju watched the room light up little by little, and his heart sank little by little. He stood up, and his heart was in pain. He couldn't just watch his wife die, but a madman like Zhao Qi could. Shi Fengju let out a long sigh of relief. He didn't call for anyone, and rode alone to the back door of the Zhizhou Yamen. The doorman seemed to have already received orders. When he saw him, he bowed and let him in without announcing anything. Shi Fengju's hands subconsciously tightened. In the flower hall, Zhao Qi had been waiting for him. He wasn't surprised to see him, and nodded at him with a smile. Shi Fengju didn't have a good expression on his face. He only had resentment. I want to see Wan Yang again. This case must be closed today, and Wan Yang's reputation will be cleared. If it drags on, it will damage her reputation. Shi Fengju said. Zhao Qi didn't mind and said lightly, Anyway, Wan Yang will come to the capital with me. It won't affect her reputation here in Qingzhou. Shi Fengju said angrily, But Wan Yang still has brothers and sisters-in-law here. How can you bear to let her have a bad reputation? Zhao Qi was startled, and said with a smile, What you said makes sense. But you won't go back on your words? I don't want you to refuse to let Sangwan go with me when she's fine. Although I have a lot of methods, it's still too troublesome. Shi Fengju said coldly, I'm going to divorce her, but this news can't be made public so soon. After all, it just happened. If the news of our divorce spread immediately, it will also damage her reputation. You take her away, and I'll just tell the public that she's going to the farm to take care of the baby. Shi Fengju didn't know how much effort it took to say these words. His cheeks twitched fiercely twice. There's one more thing in the evening. You're so thoughtful. That's it. Zhao Qi smiled happily. There's a pen and paper here. Why don't you write the divorce notice here? You can also file it with the government. Then everything will be complete. Chapter 321. I want to see Wan Yang first, Shi Fengju said coldly. If I don't see Wan Yang, I won't write it. What's the use of seeing her or not? That's unnecessary. Zhao Qi frowned. Seeing Shi Fengju's cold face and not answering, he did not want to cause more trouble, so he nodded and said with a smile, Fine, then I'll go with you. Young Master Shi, don't say things you shouldn't say. Wan Yang is still pregnant. Shi Fengju's heart hurt even more when he heard that, and he snorted coldly. Seeing that, Zhao Qi laughed even louder. He was in a good mood and could not wait any longer. He immediately pulled Shi Fengju towards the direction of the prison. The two entered the women's prison. Zhao Qi hid at the side and watched as Shi Fengju went forward. With him watching from the side, he believed that Shi Fengju would not dare to play any tricks. Once the case was closed today, he could take Wan Yang away and live a carefree life. As soon as he thought of that, Zhao Qi's heart became infatuated. He believed that his deep feelings would be able to move Wan Yang. A human's heart was made of flesh. Which part of him was inferior to Shi Fengjiu? He could give her whatever Shi Fengjiu could give her. And whatever Shi Fengjiu could not give her, he could give her. As long as there was a chance to be intimate with her, he believed that she would definitely see the good in him. Fengjiu. Fengjiu. Sangwon saw Shi Fengjiu and her heart finally calmed down a little. She rushed over and buried her head in his chest, hugging him tightly. Fengjiu, you're finally here. Wan Yang. Shi Fengjiu saw how attached she was to him and his heart ached. He hugged her mechanically and did not know what to say for a moment. Fengjiu, I didn't sleep well last night. I was so scared. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to see you again. Fengjiu, you're finally here. Sangwon murmured in his arms, making him feel an indescribable tenderness for her. Shi Fengjiu's heart ached when he heard those words. He suppressed the churning emotions in his heart and patted her back stiffly. He said softly, Wan Yang, don't be afraid. You can leave here today. Don't be afraid. Really? Sangwon was overjoyed and couldn't help but cheer. That's great, that's great. Fengjiu, let's not be separated from each other. I can't live without you. Sangwon. Shi Fengjiu's voice was a little hoarse and his mouth tasted bitter. He forced a smile and said, Yes, from now on, we won't be apart anymore. Sangwon, think about our child more. You have to be well, okay? Sangwon was completely immersed in joy. She nodded and smiled. Our child is very obedient. He has been very obedient for the past 2 days. He didn't disturb his mother at all. Shi Fengjiu saw her smile so gently and sweetly that he couldn't help but smile as well. That's good. All right, Wan Yang, the adults will bring you to the court later. I can't stay here for too long. Wan Yang, be patient. Don't forget what I told you. Shi Fengjiu said softly and caressed her face reluctantly. And I'll remember. Sangwon was reluctant to part with him, but she smiled and said, Then go quickly. Don't forget to pick me up at the entrance. Let's go home together. Okay. Shi Fengjiu smiled and nodded. He hugged her tightly, and then gently let her go. He turned and left. Seeing Zhao Qi standing aside, Shi Fengjiu's eyes suddenly turned cold. When Zhao Qi heard that Sangwon was very gentle and attached to him, he felt sour in his heart. But when he saw that Shi Fengjiu didn't talk nonsense, the sour feeling was more or less diluted. He glanced at Shi Fengjiu with a faint smile, and took the lead to go out. After receiving the divorce letter, Zhao Qi directly ordered Magistrate Hong to prepare the case after checking it. He carefully put it in his sleeve, and waited for Magistrate Hong's judgment. The few people who were at the back of the mountain that day, including the nun and Jita, as well as the 2 daughters-in-law, were all detained. Sangwon was not the only one who was detained. Therefore, from an outsider's point of view, the case could not be pinned on Sangwon. With Zhao Qi's intervention, the trial of this case was even simpler. Magistrate Hong simply went through the procedure and ordered everyone to sign. Then he let everyone go. The nun was warned and threatened. She was so scared that her face turned pale. She didn't dare to say a word except to agree without saying anything. Shi Fengjiu was still not at ease. He ordered someone to talk to the nun in private. He gave her a sum of money and asked someone to send her away from the Guanyin temple in Qingzhou. The reason was ready-made. He only said that she felt uneasy after being contaminated by this kind of thing. She didn't want to stay here any longer. Sometimes the abbot nun couldn't stop the secret activities of the Shi family. As for the 3 servants of the Shi family, they were all Sangwon's confidants. They all knew what kind of person Gu Fangzi was, so there was no need to worry. After getting on the carriage, Sangwon was a little confused when she saw that Shi Fengjiu didn't follow. The chief housekeeper smiled and said that the young master had something to say to the magistrate and asked the young mistress to go back first. Sangwon was in a happy mood and didn't have time to think. She smiled and sat quietly in the carriage with the curtain down. There was a purple copper incense burner in the carriage. The faint sweet fragrance was very pleasant. Sangwon gradually felt a little sleepy. Her eyelids became heavy and she fell asleep unknowingly. When she woke up, Sangwon was shocked to find herself on a boat, and could not help but be shocked. When she saw Zhao Qi again, her face turned pale. Why am I here? Where's Fengjiu? Where is he? Sangwon's voice was sharp and a little fluttering. She looked at Zhao Qi in a daze, and was full of vigilance. Wanyang. Zhao Qi heard and piqued at her attitude toward Shi Fengjiu. Now that he compared the two, he suddenly felt uncomfortable and smiled bitterly. Are you that unwilling to see me? Where's Fengjiu? Where is Fengjiu? I want to see Fengjiu. I want to go home and see my husband. Sangwon got off the bed and retreated vigilantly. Zhao Qi's heart was sour and he simply said, he won't be coming. Wanyang, he has already divorced you and handed you over to me. Let's go to the capital. Wanyang, don't you understand how I treat you? Come with me and I will treat you well for the rest of my life. I will dote on you and spoil you. I will never let you get hurt again. The child in your belly is my biological child. No. Sangwon's eyes flashed with pain. Seeing him coming towards her, she quickly retreated and shouted, don't come over, don't come over. Fengjiu will not abandon me, and I will not go with you. She couldn't escape the fate of being his wife in both lifetimes. The moment she was reborn, her heart was filled with despair and gloom. But since she had the chance to start all over again, how could she be willing to be manipulated by fate and go through all the hardships she had suffered in her previous life? Fortunately, she was treading on thin ice. Although each step was difficult, she eventually opened up a new world for herself and obtained a new life. She didn't know when it started, but she realized that he was not as cold and heartless as she remembered. She was played and coaxed by Gu Fengzi, but wasn't he also kept in the dark? When she was in his heart, she doubted, hesitated, and even resisted. But in the end, she couldn't resist his deep feelings for her. But now, everything was over. No matter what, Gu Fengzi had received the punishment she deserved. From now on, there would be no one between them. She thought that they could live happily together from now on. But who would have thought that Zhao Qi would appear again? Sangwon was in great pain. Was our fate destined to be so short? I didn't lie to you. Zhao Qi's voice was as warm as the spring breeze, but every word was like a knife cutting into her heart. He took out a piece of paper from his sleeve. This is the divorce letter he wrote himself. You must recognize his handwriting, right? Sangwon stepped back vigilantly and did not take the divorce letter. She stubbornly said, so what if the divorce letter is real? I still remember what you said in the prison that day. You forced him, so he naturally couldn't resist. Zhao Qi sneered. Yes, I forced him. I told him that if he didn't give you to me, then I would make sure that his Shi family's business would never be able to continue. In fact, he treated you very well. He struggled for an entire night before he made up his mind to write the divorce letter. Wanyang, do you understand? Sangwon's face turned even paler. She shook her head and muttered, I don't believe it, I don't believe it. He wouldn't do that to me, he wouldn't. Zhao Qi said mercilessly. Why wouldn't he? Could you be more important than the Shi family's business? If the Shi family were to be destroyed in his hands, how could he face his family? How could he face the ancestors of the Shi family after his death? His choice is nothing more than human nature. Sangwon did not want to. Tears welled up in her eyes and trickled down. Zhao Qi was heartbroken to see her like this. He said softly, Wanyang, but I'm different. I don't have a family, and I don't need any bullshit reputation. I only want you, and I can protect you. Wanyang, be good with me. I don't mind that you were once someone's wife. I really don't mind at all, Wanyang. Sangwon raised her head and looked at the man in front of her who was full of affection. Her heart was filled with hatred and sadness. Impossible, she already had Fengjiu in her heart. In this life, she would never give herself to anyone else. You're right. Even if Fengjiu made such a choice, it's only human nature. I don't blame him at all. But if he insisted on marrying me and caused the Shi family to fall into ruin, how can I be at ease? I don't blame him. Sangwon shook her head gently. I only hate you. If you didn't force him, he wouldn't have done that. I know how Fengjiu treats me. How can he be swayed by just a few words from you? You. Zhao Qi was fuming with anger after hearing her words, but there was nothing he could do. No matter how angry she was, he couldn't bear to deal with her the way he dealt with Shi Fengjiu. He couldn't bear to. Young Duke, Sangwon knelt down and begged. Let me go back. I beg you, let me go. Fengju and I will be grateful to you for the rest of our lives. Don't even think about it. Zhaoqi felt his chest tighten. It wasn't easy for him to get her out of Shi Fengju's hands. How could he let her go back? He had already said so much, but she was still thinking about Shi Fengju. Zhaoqi was angry and jealous. He said bitterly, he has already given up on you. In his heart, you can't compare to his family and the Shi family's business. Why do you still want to do this? What's so good about him? And how unbearable am I in your heart? Wanyang, you're so cruel. You don't even want to give me a chance. I recommend Yi's new book, Beautiful Peasant Family. A different peasant girl and her legendary story. 2 chapters a day, good behavior. Feel free to jump into the pit. Chapter 322. He had already said so much, but she was still thinking about Shi Fengju. Zhaoqi was angry and jealous, and he said bitterly, he has already given up on you. In his heart, you can't be compared to his family and the Shi family's business. So why are you still acting like this? What's so good about him? And how unbearable am I in your heart? Wanyang, you're so cruel, you won't even give me a chance. Sangwon could only cry and said, young master, he's my husband, and he said that he would treat me well for the rest of my life. Kiki. Zhaoqi sneered. Do you believe that? If he really treated you well for the rest of your life, you wouldn't have suffered so much in the past. That was in the past. Sangwon said stubbornly with tears in her eyes. That was in the past. Now he and I understand each other's hearts, and the past is the past. If not for your interference, we could have lived happily for the rest of our lives. Even without me, there would still be others. Zhaoqi's heart ached and he said coldly, his mind is not strong enough. Even without me, do you think there wouldn't be others? Kiki, do you think it's so easy to change a person's temperament? In the past, he would say that he had no choice but to make you suffer, and in the future, he would still be forced to make you suffer. He won't. Sangwon shook her head firmly, he won't. He said before that if I'm not in his life, he would never marry or want another woman. Do you believe that? Zhaoqi sneered angrily. Would old mistress sure agree? Fengju wouldn't lie to me. Good, good. Zhaoqi was infuriated by her. His blood rushed to his head, making him jealous, hateful, angry, and annoyed. He was so angry that he was about to burst into flames, but he felt as if his heart was immersed in bone-chilling ice water, so cold that he could barely feel anything. Don't even think about it. Zhaoqi gave up and did not persuade her anymore. His eyes were cold. Wanyang, I won't let go. Wanyang, don't even think about it. With the divorce agreement in hand, the capital's valiant martial manor is your home. Whatever he can give you, I can also give you. You might be able to leave. Sangwon's body stiffened. She raised her teary eyes and stared at him in a daze. Zhaoqi had never seen her so miserable, helpless, and sorrowful. The more he felt sorry for her, the angrier he became. Sangwon, he said bitterly, just give up. One day, you'll know that I'm sincere to you. Sangwon didn't say anything. Instead, she suddenly took something out of her sleeve and put it into her mouth. She raised her head and swallowed it. What are you doing? Zhaoqi was shocked and rushed forward to stop him, but it was too late. Sangwon smiled sadly. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her body swayed and fell backward. Wanyang! Wanyang! Zhaoqi hugged her and said in a trembling voice, Wanyang, what are you doing? What did you eat? Sangwon forced her eyes open and said softly, I thought that I would definitely die in this case. This medicine was secretly given to me by the prison warden with a large sum of money. I'm the young mistress of the Shi family. Even if I were to die, I can't die in the hands of others. I thought that I wouldn't need it anymore, but I didn't expect. She made a few muffled sounds in her throat and closed her eyes gently. Her body went completely limp. No. No. Zhaoqi was scared out of his wits. No, no, no. Wanyang, you can't die. I won't let you die. Someone come quickly. Fortunately, Madame Zhao felt sorry for him. She was afraid that he would fall ill due to his poor mood or not acclimatizing to the environment. Everything else could be done according to his wishes, but this accompanying physician that she had personally selected had to be brought along with him no matter what. All kinds of rare and commonly used herbs were prepared. After the physician's diagnosis, it was fortunate that she was rescued in time. She would be fine after a few days of careful recuperation. Only then did Zhao Qi feel relieved. Fei died in the hands of his mother. If Wan Yang was forced to die by his own hands, then what should he do? He didn't even want to think about such a result. If that was really the case, he would definitely go crazy. Looking at Sangwon's pale face in her sleep, there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Did she hate him that much? He didn't want her anymore. He said that he could give her everything, but she chose death over him without hesitation. In her eyes he was so unbearable. With a soft moan, Sangwon slowly opened her eyes. Seeing Zhao Qi beside her, she was a little startled. Then, she realized that she didn't die, and her eyes gradually dimmed. Zhao Qi's heart was in pain and resentment. He said bitterly, "Wan Yang, he doesn't want you anymore. Why are you still so stupid? Is it worth it for you to do this?" Sangwon shook her head and said softly, "Fengju won't abandon me. Even if he doesn't want me, he must have his reasons. He treated me so well. I can't let him down." Zhao Qi sneered and said, "You think too highly of him. Reasons? Let him down? Do you believe his words? After this period of sadness, he will still get married and have children, and live his life happily. But what about you? The road to the netherworld is bleak. Who will think of you?" He won't. Sangwon shook her head. Her voice was soft, but there was an indescribable certainty and confidence in her tone. Zhao Qi was so angry that he was speechless. He stared at her for a while before he sneered. "Fine. Since you won't give up, why don't we make a bet? Let's use a year as the time limit. If he has another woman, what will you say?" "He won't." Sangwon shook her head. "You're too confident." Zhao Qi sneered. Sangwon said, "What if he doesn't? Will you let me go?" Zhao Qi gritted his teeth and nodded. "Fine, let's use a year as the time limit." "A year is too long. Half a year. How about half a year?" Sangwon looked at him and gently stroked her belly. A year, the child was born, and she didn't want him not to be by her side. Zhao Qi saw that she couldn't wait and became angrier. He said with a cold face, "Fine, half a year it is." "Half a year, humph, half a year is enough for me to play tricks." He didn't believe that Shi Fengju wasn't a man. With a beauty in his arms, he wouldn't be disturbed. Within half a year, if he has another woman, even if it's only once, you have to give up. Sangwon was silent for a moment, then softly said, "Fine." Zhao Qi said again, "Also within this half a year, you have to give me a chance. I won't force you, but you can't reject me. Shi Fengju, he just met you first. I'm not necessarily inferior to him. When you find out how good I am, you naturally won't leave." Sangwon didn't say anything, and just lowered her eyes. Zhao Qi's heart finally softened a bit, and he said softly, "I'll take it as your acquiescence." Zhao Qi didn't bring Sangwon back to Wuwei Manor, but instead went to Suzhou. There was heaven above, and Suzhou below. Jiangnan's beautiful mountains and soft waters were more suitable for romance than the north. Moreover, Wan Yang didn't like Madame Zhao. Half a year passed by quickly. During this time, Zhao Qi had tried his best to be gentle and considerate to her, but Sangwon had always been courteous to him. She had never mentioned Shi Fengju in front of him. Only in the dead of the night. She would often lean against the window and look at the moon. Her eyes would look towards the direction of her home. She knew that he must be waiting for her. One time, Zhao Qi accidentally saw it, and the disappointment and sadness in his heart was indescribable. He also used all kinds of methods to deal with Shi Fengju, and his schemes were endless, but Shi Fengju was determined. Ever since Sangwon left, he didn't get close to women. Zhao Qi finally gave up. On this day, standing by the lotus pond full of blooming lotus flowers, Zhao Qi stared for a long time at the woman in willow yellow clothes. Her lower abdomen was already bulging, and her expression was still tranquil and gentle. But the deep affection and focus in her eyes was something he knew would never belong to him. Fengju has always said that you were frightened and affected by the pregnancy, so you were quietly nurturing the baby in the manor. Now that the melon is about to fall, you should return to the manor. Zhao stood by her side, and said lightly with his hands behind his back, but his gaze was fixed on the lotus flowers in the pond. The flowers swayed, and the lotus leaves swayed gently, like waves surging into the distance, making him feel a little dizzy. You're willing to let me go? Sangwon suddenly turned her head to look at him. She was surprised and happy at the same time. Her gentle eyes suddenly shone brightly like the brightest star in the night sky, dazzling everyone's eyes. Wanyang, so you're in such a hurry to leave me? Although he knew it, Zhao still said with a bit of jealousy and self-mockery. Sangwon was startled, then lowered her eyes and said softly, Young Marquis, that's Wanyang's home. How could Wanyang forget? I don't blame you. Zhao smiled and said, Wanyang, if the one who met you first was me, would you like me? Would she? Sangwon was silent for a moment and said, I don't know, because it didn't happen, so I don't know. Fine, I won't make things difficult for you. Zhao laughed and said, Wanyang, no matter what, I've been very happy these past 6 months. You've been with me for so long, and I'm very grateful. Wanyang, if one day he doesn't treat you well or makes you sad, don't forget, I've always been waiting for you. No matter when, you can come find me. Young Marquis. Sangwon's heart was also a bit sour, with mixed feelings. Was the heavens giving her compensation? Compensation for what she longed for in her previous life, but could not get. But this kind of compensation was too much for her to bear. Zhao understood the emotions in her eyes, and his heart relaxed. He smiled and said, Wanyang, you don't actually hate me, right? Sangwon nodded. I've never hated you. You're very good. Zhao smiled with relief. Wanyang, it's enough to hear your words. With your words, it's worth it. I'll send you away tomorrow. Thank you, young Marquis. Sangwon was suddenly full of joy, and her tranquil face was suffused with a soft glow. In the past 6 months by her side, it was the first time he saw her smile so charming and vivid. Just one look, and his heart instantly softened. Zhao was both disappointed and happy. This smile was for him alone, at least for this moment. It was for him alone. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.